I've got this thing angled the other orientation. Give me just a second. I'm going to see if I can figure out how to rotate this to where it accepts that. Well, I guess we're going to go with that. You guys hear me? All right, I guess we're here. Anybody hear me? Waiting for someone to say they hear me. Maybe it's a little bit of a delay. I can talk to myself in the garage. I'm used to doing that, but it'd be nice not to do that today. Oh, good. I see here. Now you hear me. All right. I thought I had the orientation on the screen set right, but I didn't. So I guess we'll live with it yet again today. It's still a learning process, but at least I got this far on my own. I don't have the HR manager with me today in the shop. So I'll check occasionally over here. I've got on my laptop, I'm able to see what I've got going here. So I'll check occasionally over here for questions. But to get started, I had a couple questions at the end of the live stream that I didn't get answered. And one of them was, do I find a 12-ounce belt stiff? And I don't. And more importantly, when I hand it over to the customers, they don't either. I've had a couple of ladies ask me when they're ordering a belt and they are handling the samples that I've got, can you make one thinner? And I'm like, absolutely, I can make one thinner. But everybody that's had the thicker belts don't have an issue with the 10 to 12 ounce range. When you first create the belt, it can be a little bit stiff until you work it some. But typically, I'll roll the belt up. I don't have one sitting right here. But I'll roll the belt up like this, and then I'll roll it back and forth like this to work those fibers and loosen it up a little bit. I'll pull it through the hand like this. But by the time I ship it, it feels pretty pliable, but over time, obviously, it gets more so. The belt that I'm wearing now, I've had this belt for a couple years, and if I'm not working, then that's the belt I typically wear. So I don't think most people have an issue with that. And occasionally, I'll even check. Let me see what this one here is. I think it's, so it's 11. So it's not quite 12, it's 11. It's right in the sweet spot between the 10 and the 12. And then I had someone ask, where do I learn the most? And I thought I covered that, but maybe I didn't. But I think like most people, we tend to learn the most from our biggest mistakes. The belt that you get almost finished. I had a couple of belts early on that when I first had, I had a countertop piece like this, and I would go through and I had dyed the leather. I did all the stitching on it. It was one of the belts I refer to as the Western. And then when I put the clear on it, there was dark scratches all over it. They more or less kind of went away as the clear coat had dried on it, but they were there. So then I'm like, how did I get those scratches on there? It took me another time before I realized that this edge here, where they had cut it with the tile saw or the diamond saw, and I hadn't polished the edge, that was scratching that. So, you got to watch for things like that in your shop. But the biggest mistakes, I think, are where you're going to learn the most. I had a supervisor one time tell me that they learned the most from their worst bosses. And he's like, I learned a lot of things that I would never do to an employee. So, obviously we pick up our learning as we go through life, but those are two of the good areas to learn with. So today I'm going to be working on a belt. I had someone gently suggest I don't know how you can possibly get that belt done in that length of time. So I thought I'd go through this belt building in real time. So I've got a Western belt that I need to make here, and so I'm going to cut this to length. This is now this blank here. This is a smaller belt, and I'm going to get this belt all the way to die. But we're not going to sit here and wait for the dye to dry. I'm going to hang it up, and I've got another belt that is longer, but it's in the Western style, that I'll pull out when we get to that point, and then we can continue on with it. So the first thing I need to do is I pulled out, this is an 1.25" belt. So I have an 1.25". I've got the liner, and first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get it cut to length here. And I'll check over here in a couple of minutes and see what kind of questions we got, and I'll try to filter in the questions as we go. I sure could use the HR manager today, but she had other plans. So it's 34, so I want a 44, and I typically go about an inch longer, give myself a little room there. And then I'm going to take this down here to my splitter. Let me mark off here the distance I want. This is just a sample here. Make sure I got the thickness I want. Pretty close. Let me adjust a little bit here. All right. And my fold back at the buckle end is 3.5, but I move it slightly here. So leave myself room to cut it to length when I create it. The next thing I need to do is I need to find the center of my working belt here. So 34, half of 34 is 17. I hope everybody had a good work week, and hopefully this isn't too much to have you tag along today. So next thing I need to do is I need to lay out my patterns, and I'm putting the Western on there. And my Western, I use the 6-tine weaver punch on there, and I use 3 sets of those. So it's about, I think 3.5 inches is the length of my pattern. So I've got the 17. The first thing I need to do is I split that 3-inch, these 3 patterns here, I split that both ways. So 18.5 and 15.5. Then I lay those out with a 1/2-inch gap. It's 15, 12, 11.5, 8.5. All right, 1, 2, 3, 8, 5, 5.5. I'm crowding this a little bit, but I don't like, especially on a small guy belt, I don't like to have a big space here. So I'm going to crowd this a little bit here. So I'm going to be 3 inches from the end here is where that spot's going to be. And then I count that. I have 1, 2, 3 full patterns, so I need to have 3 on this side. So I'm at 18.5, 19, 22, 22.5. Yeah, 25.5. Right? 1, 2, 3, 26. So that's 2 patterns. 29, 29.5, and 31. And it's going to be a 34 belt, so my adjustment holes will stop at 32. So that one's going to be a pretty full pattern on here, but that's okay. Then I need to find my center spot here. And I don't have a math number that I use when I create these 2 patterns. I look and see what kind of looks like the right spacing for those 2 stitches down the center. And I'm just going to lightly score here. So today, I started off, I was working on some more journal covers. The two that I made in the video last weekend, those are shipped and should be received today. I was looking at the tracking a minute ago, and it looks like it's out for delivery in a city in Indiana. So I'll just narrow it down that much in case anybody's watching thinking it's coming to them. Where it's going is a surprise to them. They're not expecting it. But I made two more here, and more natural tones. This one is natural oiled. Resist was tan coat, and I used the black antiquing. I made another one with dark brown or antique brown antiquing. Let me see if I'm missing anything over here. Oh, I see some people talking there. Looks like everybody's doing fine. All right. So now that I've laid out where those go, I'm going to go ahead and create my stitching holes for that center pattern. Now this belt is actually going to be black, and on a black belt, I typically just go ahead and I make these holes afterwards, but I didn't want to get caught for cheating on my pattern here because the other belt has the holes already in it. So I want to make sure I had the holes in here. And let me move you around a little bit closer here. I will say there's one thing that I'm not sure how it's going to work out. I've never used my microphones for such a long period of time. So if sound drops off, somebody let me know and I'll plug this in. I think they're pretty well topped off. I did have to admit that I checked about 30 minutes before going live and realized they weren't fully charged up. Sometimes a little light helps me see that little light crease mark I made with the swing dividers there. I sharpened these stitching chisels the other day, and it was interesting. Believe it or not, it seemed like after I sharpened them, it made them harder to remove from thicker leather. And I'm thinking that the reason why that is because it spreads the leather out more because of the sharper point instead of mashing part of the leather. So it's back to being a little bit harder to pull out. And I'm just looking underneath each time to see if I'm all the way through cleanly. This is kind of a fun pattern. I have to, it's crazy. I have a few patterns of belts that became popular, and it was all really because of trying to make something someone described that they wanted. I had a belt that I had purchased years ago that had a similar type pattern. It had little inset diamonds of a different color leather between them and a few different things. And I had started making belts, and one of my friends, Terry, up in Colorado, I said, I want to make you a belt. What do you want? He goes, I like that belt you're wearing right there. You make something like that? I looked at it, I'm like, yeah, sure, absolutely. And then after he left, I'm like looking at going, how am I going to make that? You know, it's very similar to that. Well, this is where that came from. And that first belt that I made for him was in black. It had faux turquoise spots between each of these patterns. So it was a black belt with white stitching. I think it was just down the middle of his, black along the edges, and the turquoise spots. And it came out really nice. And gradually, as I made it with more color combinations, it became more popular, because when I would first show people that with the black and the white thread and the turquoise, they're like, oh, that's kind of a flashy belt. I'm not into that. Well, then I started making it in different color combinations, and people's opinions really changed pretty quickly. So I should have kept track of how many of these Western belts that I have made since that first one. It's seriously, it's got to be, I don't want to guess too high. Let me think about it here for a second, but probably 60, I guess, would be a pretty good number, 60 of these in different color combinations. And it may be more than that. I don't have very many on hand right now, but I've got probably, I've probably got 10 that I've got on hand now, but I've made them in such a range of colors. To me, it's just a nice looking belt, and it's my favorite so far on the ones that are stitched in the middle. But I have to say, just another example. I had a viewer, subscriber, suggest the double axe head tooling from Barry King, and I have to make myself one of those. It is one of the neatest belts, and I think it's going to be extremely popular this summer. I think I need to make it in 2 or 3 different color combinations so I can have those on display, and I probably need to only take orders for them so that people can see all the different color combinations in person. Let's see here. So these pencil marks, you want to make sure you erase those. I'm going to be dyeing this black, so it's really not critical for this belt. But after I get done, I just erase those marks. And if you haven't seen me make this, this first row of patterns, I want the next holes to line up perfectly to that. So I just index it in that first row, slide this mini speed square up against it, and then I make sure I'm on that little groove that I made. So if somebody joined just afterwards here, I answered a couple of questions. If you've got some other questions, put them in the comments. In just a moment here, I'll take a quick gander and see if there's anything there I need to answer. But I answered a few questions, and I had someone, as I said, kind of gently say, how can that really be possible to make the belt that they were asking about was the one that was in the short the other day. It had the snake skin in it. If you didn't see that short, you can go back and see that short. I've got a full-length video coming out on that belt, but it's probably a month away. I don't want to wear people out with all belt projects on Saturday mornings. So right now I'm running basically one every other Saturday, and I've got other projects ahead of that one. And it's not finished editing yet either, so I have to edit it and upload it. All right. So there are my stitching holes. Next thing I need to do is to dye this. on my gloves here. Let me see if I got any questions here. Let's see, $8 pair. I don't think that's. Yeah, so I didn't see every question, but I saw, I think it was James asking about lining up the axe head stamp on the belt. And it can be a challenge, there's no doubt. Hang on a second. So what I do, or when I first started doing it, I was just visually looking for center on this rounded part and working it down the belt with this on that center little groove line that I made on the belt with the wing divider. Then on the other side, when you move it forward, this mark here, this smaller side, is already there. I just line up these two wings equally on either side of this part here. Make sure this is lined up again and strike it again as I go down through there. When I'm on the widening out the pattern, then you just have to watch and make sure that this point here lines up properly there. So it's a little bit of eyeballing it there. I really think if you've practiced some on a scrap, it ought to get pretty easy. I do think that making sure you have a deep definition of a stamp will definitely help in that area. Let me get this done here. I just use a plastic shoe box here, storage box. And you have to put more in than you think because it's got to, be able to run through it. It wasn't a full quart. I only had about half a quart there. And this is the buckle in here. And if you remember, I said I left myself about a ½ inch extra. So here in the corner where it get cut off anyway, I make a little hole here. And then I'll make one here in my liner. And I use a paper clip bent around here to run that through. And I bring this cardboard out more so for other colors. Black isn't so much so, but occasionally when I run it through, maybe a run runs across the front and it darkens it up. So I can take a piece of denim, dip it in the dye, and help blend that out if that's the case. On black, it's really not so obvious because it's a very opaque stain. This rags had many colors on it. You don't want to do that on a light color. Obviously, if I get a little brown in with that, you won't see it. There's the front of the belt. I use the cutoff from that to make for the keeper. So I'll do that as well. Once again, it's not as critical on black, doing that with the keeper. I do keep a box underneath here of scraps of keepers. Occasionally I forget to do this and I can dig out a black one from there. Just hanging that up on my garden rake modified. Let me run the liner through here. There's no doubt someone's going to say dip dye and use a lot of dye. You do use more dye. There's no doubt about that. A lot of times on the liner, I will go ahead and just hand dye the face of the liner. All right. And today I'll probably make a mess, or more of a mess than normal. I don't use a funnel. Yeah, I'm concentrating here. I buy all of the dies in quarts. I do try to stick with my basic set of what I keep on hand. The one that I purchased that I thought was going to be popular, I hate it when it feels like the gloves are leaked, that I thought was going to be popular was Saddle Tan. And I think it's real popular in some parts of the country, but it just isn't popular here. I've made a few things with it. I've probably got 2 quarts of Saddle Tan pretty much unused. And I may find a color to mix with it. I've got a color over there. I don't know if anybody's used. I think it's called dark chocolate. And I don't like that color at all. I think it's a little bit on the ugly side. And, you know, once again, maybe I should get out of my own way, make a belt out of it and have it on display. Maybe somebody will like it, but I just don't like that color. But maybe I can mix the two together and get them used up on something. But I was saying I buy the quartz because dip dyeing, it uses quite a bit of dye on a full-size belt. It probably uses 1.5 ounces of dye to do that. All right, now through the magic of television, we have it dry here. Let me move you a little bit closer. I'll peek at the comments here real quick. Looks like we're still okay. All right, so the dye is dry here, and I think you got it now. When I create the holes and then I dye it, I get darker around here, and most people like that. I call it a faded. This is the golden brown, but I call it faded golden brown when it's like that. So the next thing I need to do, so that I can get ready to stitch that, is I need to put the Resin on here. This is going to have white thread in the middle, and if I were to do the stitching now and then coat this with Resin, when I'm buffing that Resin on, it will move that dye around and dye that white thread. Don't want to dye the back, just the front. But let me buff it off a little bit here first. It's going to have black thread along the sides. Some colors seem like you have to do more buffing than others. This color, not so much. All right. And I've said before, I keep the cardboard in, I have one for each application I do over here so that I don't get oil on something that I don't want it to be on or whatever. I guess I'm still showing here. Yeah, looks like it. The gloves I use with black, I typically try to stay away from them so I don't end up with transfer fingerprints or something. And when I oil things, usually when I'm done oiling, I throw those gloves away. I like the blue ones over black ones, and the reason why is because the black, it's hard to see what's on them. The blue, I can tell what I've got on those so I don't get some contamination. And I don't know, maybe I should just throw them away. I'm just working it down into these holes here pretty well on the face. That'll help seal that so I don't have a bunch of color transfer. And I've said if you put it on like I'm doing, make sure you get it worked in thoroughly, because the first time I did it, I had some streaks, and you can't work those out later. You got to get them as you're going. Get back up there. I think you can see that pretty well. I'm gonna hang this, let that dry while I work on these for a minute. It may not be true where you're at, but it's a really dry environment here in Arizona. So that clear finish dries exceptionally fast. So I'll be able to get on that here pretty quickly. I could have put the clear on yesterday or this morning, but I didn't want it to look like I was cheating on how long it takes. And sometimes I wait to put this on the back after I've got it assembled. But I'm killing a little bit of time while that dries some. And I'm saving some time on the other end when I do that. I'm not going to put it on this one yet. We're going to work on this keeper for a minute here. The one thing that when I create this, I could cut the keeper to the size, but I don't. So it's darker along the sides. So what I will do is I'll cut about 1/4 inch off the side of this, and then I'll set my keeper width. And about this size, my keeper's about 1/2 inch. Okay. Number 2 rons, front and back. So I've got the Prescott, Arizona trade show coming up here. I think that we start on, seems like it's like the 21st, so 3 weeks away. It starts on Wednesday for me. I've got a class with Don Gonzalez on Wednesday, and it's the guitar strap tooling. Let me grab a little bit of water here. So anyway, it's a guitar strap tooling with Don. It's an all-day class, so I'm looking forward to that. And then Thursday is, there's more classes on Thursday, and in the evening there is a mixer in the hotel lobby where you can meet other creators and attendees and vendors and such. And I've gone to that in the past. I'm not sure if I will this year or not because I don't have anything to do over there on Thursday, so wife and I might go bum around Prescott on that day. And then Friday is the first day of the trade show. So I'll be at the trade show on Friday. And I don't know if we'll be there on Saturday or not. The last year, I ended up leaving Friday after the deal and drove home. It's about a 2-hour drive home. We may stay Friday night and drive home Saturday morning, but I don't know that I'll go on Saturday. About the only reason to go back on Saturday is if I control myself on buying something that I really don't need on Friday, and then decide that I actually need that on Saturday morning. I'm just going to cut a square in on the end here. And let's see here. I see a little conversation about that double axe head. I know that Dean mentioned that he's had some challenges getting it lined up to where he likes it. All right, did you see where I put my, there it is, I didn't put it back. So I'm just going to create some stitching holes here. I am not going to stitch it yet because I really need the finished belt to know what length it needs to be. I'm just doing a little bit of work here while that top dries some. So I was curious if, tell me if there's one of my belt patterns that you like better than the other one. I'm curious to see, especially leather crafters, if there's a particular one they like better than the others. I'm just going to put a little bit of Resin on here so that when I do the stitching, then I'm about done. Yesterday I was working on a different belt and I created my keeper and I went inside with it laying like this, and then I came back out and moved the cardboard over there and then went looking for the keeper and I couldn't find it. And I looked for like a half an hour all over underneath everything, and then I walked over to the sink. I guess I carried it that way when I went in the house and set it down over there. That was a waste of time. All right, somebody's going to say this isn't dry yet, but it's getting there. So here's where we're at. And as I said, I'm going to use white thread in the center. Let me see what you guys are looking at here. All right, let's see here. Yeah, I'm sorry, Milo, it didn't work out to be able to go to Prescott. Milo, I'm with you on the less and less time to get the haircut. I think a smart barber takes their time so that you don't feel like you're getting cheated there. And so you're going to go to Sheridan instead? Sheridan would be fun. I don't know that I can get up there. It seems really close to this one. I would like to go to Sheridan. I don't know. If not this year, then next year. So this calls for white thread in the center. 1, 2, 3. So I'm only going through one layer. So about 3 is enough. But I'm going to do 3.5 times 2. Why do I do that? This white thread will pick up some color. That first foot or so on each side of the needle, this is probably way too much, but it picks up some of that color. And by doing it this way, that first part will pick up that color and the rest of it will be more true to color. There's another thing that I would say to do. On this one, I cut enough to do the whole thing all the way around. And I would tell you, if you're doing a black belt, not to do that. And here's the reason why. When I first start off, say I stitch from this end going that way. When I first start off, the thread is nice and clean because it's not been ran through the leather, 150 times, to get to that point. And I will work all the way to one end on one side, and regardless of how much thread I got left over, I will just stop there and I pick up another one going that way. my thought process on that is, if it starts off really white here and gains some color as it comes this way, if you do that, going that same way both times, then they should be very similar in how they look. So, it may not be perfectly white by the time you get to the other end, but it's going to match the unperfectly white of the other side. I think that makes sense. So that's another way of doing it. But I would always, if I'm doing white, I make sure I've got extra thread that I'm throwing away to get rid of some of that where it picked up color. And I'll probably pick up a little more color today. So the person that challenged me here, tell this thing here, go away. Like I said, they weren't being rude about it. They're just like, I just don't see how you can get that done in that length of time. And I even admitted that, it's like, hey, that length of time is not all in one setting because you got to let things dry and such. I'll stitch down through here on this, and I can see our comments here. This stitching pony, I've talked a little bit about it, but since I'm standing here, this is the Dream Machine stitching pony. And I've said I've got things here that I like and things that I definitely don't like about it. I've looked at those ones that you like sit on under your leg. And if you wanted to work on the workbench, you could take one of those and clamp it to the workbench and have one that would be similar to this. And you can buy those for like less than $40. I think this one here was $140 or something like that. I bought it through Rocky Mountain Leather Supply, but there's lots of places that you can buy it. But like I said during the other live stream, I have a hard time just coming out and saying it's the greatest thing, because if you make heavier items like purses and such, this pivot here, it's hard to get it tightened up enough to where it doesn't want to move on you. I took it apart and roughed up that area in there to try to get a little bit more bite out of it. I could try to see if I could squeeze like a leather washer on both sides of the clamp body and see if that helped. And I had someone ask me the other day about, so here when I get to this skip spot here where there'll be a rivet there for an accent, then I transfer to the back side. But I had someone the other day ask about the people that won the belts, and they both have their belts. The first one, I think most of you guys probably saw the Alaska Gary belt, because I made a video of making that one. The second belt has been received as well, and I think he's happy with that. It's coming out in a video down the road, but I didn't do like a complete how to build a belt on that one. I talked more about how I center the pattern on the belt and some of the things I've learned on centering that. And that works whether it's a stitched pattern like this, or if it's a, or just conchos. So I talked quite a bit about centering the pattern, and I don't know, when I look back at it now, I'm like, it's such an easy topic. Why is that such a big deal? But those were some of the things that, I really struggled with at the beginning trying to figure it out, because it seems like no one really talks about, how to do each of those and things to consider. So hopefully it's something of interest. And James is talking about multiple projects. Yeah, a lot of times I'll work on multiple projects, and one of the things that's a little bit challenging is if I'm recording multiple projects, trying to remember where I was at, what I was talking about when I quit one and went to the next, especially if it's over several days that I'm working on, say, a clutch and a belt and a sheath. And then the other one, I probably should just go to a uniform shirt so my shirt's the same all the time. But a lot of times, like right now, there's a shirt hanging over there, and that's a video that I'm working on, because I try to then put on the same shirt you know, from one video recording to the next on the same belt. Oh, Chuck Dorsett, he just wears the same gray, I think it's a hooded sweatshirt, but the same gray sweatshirt on every one of his, and that's probably a smart way to go because then you take that out of it. But yeah, I work on multiple projects, and I prefer to work on multiple belts at a time, and if I can, I try to group them together. Like both of these two belts here are Westerns, and I actually pulled one other project ahead because I knew I had a request coming in. I thought it'd be a Western so that I have those together because, you know, it just helps me to keep fresh in my mind, you know, what I'm doing on each one of them. Because there's certain things to remember, certain orders when you get into like the gunslinger or the Western belts. I had someone talk about my, you know, about pricing. Did I skewer that? No, I didn't. About pricing my work. About, you know, if you are too inexpensive. I don't know if you saw the video from today or not, but I didn't charge very much to do that work. And the risk of that is you end up with just people that want things done for nothing. I get that. I guess I fell into two things on that one. I thought it might be an interesting project to have for a video. So I didn't want to be too high to where they say, nope. I really wanted to do the project. And I wasn't going to have a whole lot of supplies in it. I had a liner and then two end pieces that I pulled out of my shorts. Not out of my shorts, out of my short cut-off box. And that was really it. She did end up changing the buckle out. The buckle that they had was a fairly inexpensive punched out buckle, and we put a stainless steel buckle on it. I thought the stainless steel buckle looked better. The one that came with was a center bar buckle. I'm just not a fan of a center bar buckle for a belt on a full-size person. You know. Plus, the other concern was that folded back on itself, that put a lot of stretch or stress on that connection that I made extending that belt. So anyway, yes, you're right. And I had a gentleman that I just kind of loosely know last Sunday ask me, see the belts, and I didn't have any with me, so I showed some pictures, and you know, he quickly says, I'll take a brown one in the Classic, I'll take a black one in the Classic, and I'll take one of the Western ones, and I like this color combination. And we had talked loosely about belts a couple weeks before, and you know, on the way home, I'm like, did we talk about price? Because I don't remember us talking about price, and I think I threw out, you know, a price, but I think it was maybe with his wife and not him. And so then, you know, you're like, you know, and I did get his information. I said, I'll send you some information before. So, you know, I got home and I was trying to figure out, you know, it's that same thing I was talking about before of how do you handle like friends and family when they ask you to make things. So do I give the guy a discount? Do I not give the guy a discount? I mean, we just know each other. You know, it's not like we're long lost friends or anything, but I mean, he's a nice enough guy. So I was sitting there trying to figure out what to do, and then he sent me a text. Hey, can you tell me about how much those belts are we're talking about? I'm like, all right. So he really doesn't have any idea where the price is. So I said, I'll send it to you in the morning with some pictures of belts. And really, I was trying to think on how I wanted to handle that. But I'm like, you know, you have to be careful how far you go with, you know, doing something with a price. In ordering 3 belts, I've had people ask before if I'd give a discount on 3 belts, and I've actually told them no. But at the same time, they were looking at like, I think I may have said this before, but they were looking at a knife sheath. And I said, you know, I won't give you a discount on those, but I'll make that, it was just a pancake sheath. I'll make that pancake sheath for you for free. So it gives them a win and keeps me having integrity on the pricing, because, you know, where that was up in Colorado, and it's a small community, and, you know, someone's going to say, well, I didn't get that price. I paid more. So anyway. Yeah, what did you play your shorts? I saw that, Dean. Yeah, it's this box here. It says 1.5 inch shorts. So I try to be organized, because if it's just in a scrap bin down there, you may not bend over and dig through there to try to figure out, you know, if there's something in it that'll work. So anyway, I keep those, and then there's another box there that's marked liners. And if I cut a strap of leather that is, say I'm cutting 1.5 inches, and I'm actually cutting the liner and the face to the exact same size, and if my cut goes a little bit wonky, then I put it in the liner box, and then I'll use that for the liner on, say, 1.25 inch belt, and then I'll just trim it to fit. Or if I've got, when I'm cutting the leather, if it's got a blemish in it that I don't think would be cut off on one end or the other, then that goes in that same liner box. So when I get ready to make a belt, I'll pull that liner box out and look through it and see if there's anything in there that'll work. So that black belt that I dyed there, I got a liner out of that box for it. But this one I didn't. I used 2 of my regular storage box there. And it was actually a little bit heavy. They were like 6.5 ounces. And so I went ahead and stripped them down so that they were the thickness that I was looking for, to stay under 12. So this should come out here right around 11 ounces when I get done. Yeah, so I worked for Sherwin-Williams for years, and they used to have, I don't know if anybody remembers the old slide scales that you would have. You know, some of them was used to maybe, you know, this drill bit equates to this size or whatever. Well, the company had made one, and on the front it says, before you cut your price. And it was to consider that if you cut your price, you could go in there and you could say, I'm cutting my price by 10%. So then it tells you how many more gallons you would have to sell to generate the same income, the same profit when you cut that price. You know, just to get it, to see it from another standpoint, because, you know, you cut the price on your belt, you know, anyway, you know where that's going. But it's interesting because I have a few friends, but I have a few friends, and one in Colorado runs a business. And I told them, you know, they're like, you know, it's really hard because, you know, these people are friends, you know, and, you know, what do I do on pricing? And I'm like, well, one, they're not much of a friend if they expect you to take your profit out of doing the job. And the person does pretty good sized jobs, can only do so many in a summer, and then in the wintertime in Colorado, can't do much of that type of work. I'm not giving any more information than that because there's people on here that would probably figure out who I was talking about. But I'm like, you know, the people, if they're friends, they want to see you be successful. So, and if they don't want to see you be successful, I'm not sure they're a friend. They might be a mooch instead. So, you know, what you might do is say, I'm going to do, you know, something extra. You know, I'll come by in the fall and add some fertilizer, or do something that, you know, people can see as, you know, being genuine, but that doesn't cost you, you know, every bit of your profit. Stitch in time saves 9. There you go. So sometimes people are like, you know, what do you do when you're stitching? And normally, I don't know if you saw it in the background, but I've got a TV over there, and I'll put on YouTube videos of people that I follow. I've played movies on there before, but most of the time it's other YouTube creators that I follow along. Rick's Outdoors, I'll watch his, or Noel's Firewood and Garden Tractors. I'll put on there and see what he's up to. There's a bunch of them out there, and I feel bad. Rick asked me to, or he asked people, and then he named the people that he was recommending for this, but we're to list the people that you watch and, you know, what you like about them. And I've gotten to where the list is so long, I'm afraid that I'm going to I'm going to forget, Todd outside again, or I'm going to forget Bobby Six Guns, or a bunch of those different ones there. And so I didn't respond to that challenge. I haven't done that, and that's the reason why. The other advantage of doing one length on each side of this is by now I wouldn't be pulling a second time on each thread. I'd be done, when I just pull out straight here. But we'll get there. I hope everybody's got good weekend plans here, and I hope everyone's healthy and wise. Seems like about everybody I talked to's either been sick, under the weather. I see Rick's in there. I don't know if he heard me a minute ago. I was talking about you, Rick. Did you hear that or not? If not, you might want to skip back about 3 minutes, and I was talking about you. But Rick, him and his wife have been sick, and they missed doing their videos and working in the wood yard and the things that they do for about 3 weeks, and I think he's just now kind of getting back up to strength. Ah, there you go. I see. You heard me talking about you. I feel bad. You spent a bunch of time talking about my YouTube channel, and then, yeah. Like I said, I'm hesitant to do it because I guess I could list them down and list all of them out. I do watch some of the big name ones out there, and they don't need any props. They, 600,000 subscribers, and it's like their own TV station. But Rick and his wife do a good job. They create firewood and sell firewood, and they have videos on doing that. And they just made a big investment and purchased a conveyor to move the firewood. You get those larger firewood processors, and it creates firewood so fast that your next challenge is getting the wood to and away from the splitter. It becomes its own job. But it also saves the back. So you're wise but not wealthy, Dean. Well, I'll tell you, if you're wise, then you're probably better off than a bunch of people out there. I wonder if the person I'm making this for is watching. Yeah, Rick, I see that. Game changer for you, the conveyor. Yeah, I noticed that Donetta had probably the largest smile I've ever seen on her face there. She's working away. You make sure you harness that power. You can probably set her up and then go mow some lawns while she's splitting firewood. She probably keep the thing moving. It's a good thing you got so far ahead on your firewood before you got sick. I think you already said you had, I guess, probably somewhere around, let me think about it, 20 or 30 full cord of wood split for next fall. Don't want to forget to skip over this spot. Guess it become obvious pretty quickly. How long have I been stitching on this, Dean? Probably about 15 minutes. He said he uses I think he inferred that he used a stopwatch to keep track of his time. He does leather work to make sure he knows how much time he has in it. And I don't do that. I do know how long it takes to stitch down the sides of a belt. But the other work, some of it's a little bit of a guess, and some of it's just some experience, and some of it's just from knowing that, I can either do one project or two projects in a day on that. And typically when I'm working on a belt, unless I'm on a time constraint, I'll work for a while and then I'll decide it's time to go do something else, and maybe I'll sit down and edit a video for a while or respond on a comments on YouTube or do some of those type of things. James, you don't like firewood? You know, I don't know why. It seems like it wouldn't be so, but I find creating firewood relaxing, running the chainsaw, and maybe it's just because you have to focus on what you're doing enough that your mind is completely occupied and you're not thinking about the things in life that stress you. And maybe that's the reason why I like that physical work that does require some thought processes, because it just ties up, you know, all of your computing power. All right, we're in the last one here. And I think I said it, but on this pattern, they're 3 inches long, and then when I get to this last one, it's 1.5 inches long, or thereabout. What I do is I do one full set with the 6-prong stitching chisel, and then I'll overlap that by 3 holes and make the next one. And not long ago, that was a mistake I made. I drove it in there with the 2 lengths of it there. Not long ago, I was making one, and so that one got out with longer on I think that was on the buckle end. So yeah, sometimes there's mistakes made. I was telling somebody that, you know, you have to get over being a perfectionist to a certain point to do work like this. You're striving for perfection, but there's going to be things that happen, and some things you have to figure out how to fix, and some things you can't fix, and some things don't need to be fixed. That's one reason why I've got a purse I need to get started. I doubt Matt's watching today, but I've got a purse I need to make for Matt, for his wife, and I haven't got it started yet. Well, I just received the hardware this week, but normally when I do that, I jump on it right away and get started. But I didn't in this case because, one of the things I don't like doing is making a project like, say, a purse that is, I'm just switching to the other side on the back here. When I first started, I used to make a hole out here and I kind of come to a point, but I didn't think that the point was all that clean, and so I stopped doing that. Anyway, what I was saying is I told myself last year that I wasn't going to make any purses to order, you know, because someone may say, well, that one's 7.5 inches wide. I want this one 8 3/4 inches wide, and I want it about 1 inch deeper. You know, there are people out there who can do that. That's kind of me on belts. I can do whatever needs to be done on belts. But when it comes to the purses, sometimes things don't come out exactly how I envisioned that they would. Well, now that's a problem if you said you're going to make it exactly like a certain way for a person. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll tell them, if they want that, I'll do, like I'll make it based off of this plan. And then I tell people, let me back up. I've only had, I think, one project. I don't even know if I had one project. I was giving myself a little bit of room, wiggle room there. But I tell people when I make it and when I hand it over, like I'll hand you the belt and it's usually wrapped up, and I'll tell you, when you open this up, if there's anything in here you don't like, I'd rather you just tell me now, and I'll make another one and I'll put that one on display. And I've not had that happen with anybody. I did have a project not long ago that the gentleman I made it for was having some challenges getting things to fit the way they will. I don't want to say more than that because then you guys will pick up on which project it was. He sent it back, and I did some adjustments and sent it to him again, and I even told him then, you know, if it's not what you want, you let me know, and I'll just buy it back. But that's one reason, like on purses, I would rather just make a purse, put it on display. If you pick it up and you like it, then there shouldn't be anything about it not being exactly the right size, right? It's what you chose. So I would rather do purses and totes that way. I've got, I need to get back to them. I've got a stack of travel totes over here that are halfway done. Just got a little bit of work to do and then sew them together. But I would rather just make those, set them on the counter. If you don't like the color or you don't like the shape or the size, then I guess the person won't buy it. And if they like all that, then they take it the way it is. When you're going from one of these to the next, be careful you don't pull this too tight, because you could fold this over like that, and then you have a hard time when you go to laminate the two layers together. James says, I don't like eating sawdust, love sawing wood, dragging logs, splitting, not much for stacking and loading. Yeah, there's always parts of it that, you probably aren't going to like. I mean, there's actually parts of making belts. I really don't like doing the edge burnish myself. That's the part I kind of dread, is the edge burnish. I think part of that's because I've got some problems with my right shoulder, and something about that action is my shoulder ends up hurting from that. But Rick, he started off, he was stacking almost all of his wood, and then everybody started talking about building wood bins, pallets on the ground and pallets up around the edge, and throw it in there. I watch it. There's another guy out there. Most of the woodhounds know who it is, but he used to stack all of his, and he doesn't anymore. And he throws the firewood in there, and he always makes sure there's enough in there. And I've seen people say, I don't understand why you're giving extra wood away. And it's a trade-off. Do you want to spend the time stacking the wood, or do you want to spend the time making the wood? And you can afford to give a little extra firewood, but not have the pain of having to stack it to measure what you've got. And I can throw it in the trailer and have a pretty good idea of what the wood is in quantity, because I've thrown it in the trailer and then gone and stacked it. And I don't usually sell any firewood. I've got 2 or 3 people that I give some wood to that buy a little bit from me. Yeah, James says the women's stuff is hard to make custom, pretty personal. Yeah, I find that with women's purses, women's wallets. The other one that I've had a few people ask me if I make, and I can, but I need to really have like a lot of input, and that is like a worker's construction belt, with all the pouches for chisels and screwdrivers and all of that. I mean, you have to really understand it, and maybe that's the whole thing on the women's purses and totes and wallets and such. We're not seeing it from their perspective, so we don't understand what's important to them. I suppose that's the other side of that. I was talking with another Leathercrafter a couple weeks ago, and they were talking about their totes and the things that they do to them, and she's trying to explain to me why that's important, because of the way it's used. Well, I'm glad to have you along, Dean, and I used to watch, I'll go ahead and say it, Chuck Dorsett's live. He used to have a live, first he had it every Wednesday, and then he switched to every other Wednesday, and it was an hour-long live, and I would see more conversation between people in the comments section than he was covering as well. And I would just put it on when I'm in the shop, and most of the time the topics weren't anything of interest, but once in a while someone would be talking about something I found more interesting, and I would watch it. Then he went to every other week, and then it seemed like there was more I don't know, giveaways of things and that, and it became less about creating than it was, than it was previous. And I like to try to answer questions on that. Speaking of that, I don't know if I got any more questions on my list over here or not. Chuck is awesome. I've met Chuck a couple of times, and of course, obviously he's doing what he works for Weaver, so he's doing, whatever corporate, wants done too. But I like his teaching style. That's the first guy that I watched on YouTube doing leather work was Chuck Dorsett. And, I gradually found, Don Gonzalez and Aaron Heiser. And I think Aaron's way of teaching is more similar to mine. And what I mean by that is it's not as, heavily produced or edited. It's not like an infomercial type of thing. It's just him. And actually, I think, and it takes time to do, but he could probably edit his down a little bit. I could probably make mine shorter as well. It seems like I've gotten to where I don't take as much out because I get feedback that, no, I like that information in there. But, Chuck's stuff was, really, it still is. I like his projects. And I learned a lot from watching his videos, seeing the techniques that he uses. And I was saying before that, watching Don Gonzalez, even making saddles, I pick things out of his techniques that work for me. And so I ended up, doing the same, type of thing on my side. Anyway, I learned from all of those. I think we can. And I like, Aaron Heiser doesn't get pulled into, drama. There's a couple of creators out there, one I'm not going to mention, but I mean, it seems like every third word starts with F, and it just, it's not like I've got virgin ears or something, but it's like, yeah, I mean, I've used that word before to make a point, but I don't know that, do I need to make that point multiple times in a minute? I just don't think you do. And I'd rather keep my channel to where you can have it on with the kids in the background, and you can be confident. I'm not gonna do anything that I think would be inappropriate, things that I wouldn't want my kids to hear. Let's see here, SB foot, Red Wing. Yeah, that is Red Wing. I do use, I bought quite a bit of that. I like the SB foot leather for some of my totes. And Dean, I get what you're saying. You made the comment that you want to buy, leather that you can get 18 months from now and get the same leather and make another project if somebody wants that. And I get that. I just feel like especially on those totes, that people are buying those, and they don't. I guess they don't need a matching one a year from now that's going to be exactly the same. Even though I will say that a lot of those colors that I bought somewhat recently, I think it was August was the last time I bought some. It's the same color what I had bought 2 years ago on that SB foot. And it's a price to where, I can make that bag and sell them too cheap, and I do. I've got to raise the price this year. But I can sell them too cheap and make a little bit of money on the labor side of it. The way I try to price things like those totes, I've accepted a certain level of profit on, say, a belt like this. And I know how long it takes me to make a belt like this, and so I equate it over to that tote. So if the material cost is similar and the length of time is similar, then I price it similar to, like the belt. I've only had a couple people, I don't know if I've had anybody say that price is too high. I've had a couple people probably ask for the price, not buy it. They were hoping the price was cheaper. And I've said it before, I guess I could probably make those and sell them, quite frankly, for probably twice the price. I would sell a quarter of them in a year than I do now, and I would only make, people that were able to spend, say, $450 for a travel tote, I'd only make those people happy. The way I look at it is I can sell them at a much lower price and see the smile on the face of more people that get them. And it's not like I'm, like, oh, he's, a saint or something like that. I mean, I'm still, making some money, and I'm still taking that and, putting it back into more equipment and such. Anyway, that's just my theory on it, what I would like to do, and what I enjoy. What I enjoy most, I like making the belts, but I enjoy seeing people in the community then wearing the belt. They're at church on Sunday wearing the belt, or I see them at the restaurant, or wherever, and they're wearing that belt, and I take a lot of pride in that. And then when those same people come back the next year and ask for another belt in a different color or a different style, then that's a nice validation that they like what I've got. And what I do is I keep phone number lists. They're in my contacts of everybody I've sold a belt to, and if it's anybody that's near where I've got my artisan sale, or if that's where they bought it on the day of the artisan sale, then I'll just send them a quick text. If anybody says please don't text me anymore, then I would stop. But I send them a quick text with a picture of maybe my new style for the year. So if it was you, then you would get a text of my belt with the, call it the Woodsman, with the double bit axe on it in a color that I think, looks nice. I'd send that to them and say, hey, I just want to let you know I'm set up over here. I'll be here today and tomorrow. And by the way, here's my latest creation. And I get a lot of those people, if they're in the area, they come by to say hi and show me what they've got going on, and occasionally buy another belt or a wallet or a purse or such. So it's fun to see those same people the next year and see that they're happy with what they bought. All right, I'm just about done here. I don't know how long it's been on here. I'm going to guess. Sorry, you guys, it's a long video. I'm going to guess 45 minutes doing the center stitching on here. I don't know if that's accurate or not. It'd be close to that. James, I see what you said there. I need a subscriber email list. Yeah, I don't disagree. I don't know why it is. I feel like, and it's probably more intrusive, but I feel like a short text sent to them, one, the chance that it gets lost in spam mail is not there because it's sent as a text. It comes in quick. They can swipe away if they don't want to see it. And I'm usually in real time, like I'm here today, here today, gone tomorrow, come by. So that's the reason why I've done it that way. I guess what I could do is I could create a group text, but I don't want to do that because people didn't respond and it responds to everybody in that group. That would be a way, I think, to get everybody all pissed off. So we're just about done here. You can see that this white thread, it's picked up some color, but it hasn't really picked up a ton. That Resling worked down into those stitch holes, I think really, that really helps keep from dyeing that. And the one thing I didn't mention, but when I'm moving this forward and I've got this skip area here, I'm stitching, a lot of times I'll try to get it in between the jaws. That helps me keep from over tightening that, the threads in that one area there. Finish up here, and then I just tie a square knot and I leave the threads I probably don't even have to tie a knot back here because the two layers sandwiched together, contact adhesive would keep that from coming out. You could probably just do an overhand knot there, but I tie a square knot, and when I tap the thread down, I find that it flattens out where that knot is, so you don't ever really see that. Yeah, there's quite a bit of thread there, isn't there? Yeah, I think it's still pretty clean. Anyway, I'll just cut this off here. About an inch long with my favorite pair of scissors. These are Ginger scissors. It's not a commercial, but I just love those scissors. Now I've got a little bit of pucker in these, so if I have that, normally I don't tap this down until I get them layered together, but I'm gonna go ahead and tap this down some, and that'll relieve some of that. So I have people say, you know, what are your step-by-step? And sometimes it's just like that. I normally wouldn't tap that down, but I like, you know, I respond to what I'm seeing on the belt at that time. All right. Get this water out of the way here. A little contact adhesive. Get dizzy there, sorry. Spinning around. On the liner, this liner's fairly thin. I don't need to skive this one down. On this other end, like I started off, I ran it through and I took a little bit off the end there. You know, let me run through here and just see if I skim any off of it. No, not really. It just took some of the fuzz off. Oh, you know what? I didn't run that through. I'm like, I don't see where I did that. But I did that on the black belt. Let me mark here. And I'll do that here. I'm like, why does that not feel like it stepped down there? There we go. Sorry about that. A little audible. I like working contact adhesive off this edge here so that I don't get it on anything off this corner. You guys already know what kind of contact adhesive I put. Put it in the comment section. See if you guys know. And I'm not saying that the others aren't good. I bet Weldwood, not Weldwood, I bet that Barge contact adhesive is an awesome contact adhesive. In the summertime, I am not near any leather supply. So when I need contact adhesive, I either have to have it with me when I go there or buy it at the hardware store. I guess I could have it shipped. I'm not much of an Amazon person. I don't typically buy from them. And I definitely subscribe to make sure you buy the right tool the first time if you can. I still have tools over here on the rack that I bought the very first time I went to Tandy buying tools because I bought what it looked like I would need. I don't know why, but in those situations, I hate asking for help. You know, I feel like everybody in there is an expert. They all know what they're doing, and I hate to ask for help. And so I kind of fumble through and buy what I think I need. But I've spent money on tools that I haven't used. And when I see some of those kits, you know, especially depending on what you're making, there could be things in a kit that, maybe the kit's a good price, but it's only a good price if you're using everything in there. If half the stuff you're not going to use, then you spent money on stuff you didn't need, and then maybe the quality is suspect on some of those. And it isn't with everything. Even Barry King has kits. They have, bundles of different style of tools. So just because it's a kit doesn't mean it's bad. I'll get this on here and I'll walk over there real quick and see if there's any questions. So dump a question in there if you've got a question. Hey, while we're at it, I added it, and I don't know if everybody's noticed it or not, but I added playlists. I didn't have playlists until January, early in January, but I created playlists for different topics, small projects or gift projects, tool reviews, and belts, holsters, whatnot. You get the idea. But if you go to the channel, and instead of clicking on videos or shorts, if you slide over a little bit, you'll see playlists. And then I just thought maybe it was an easier way for you to find things, because at times I have people, they'll say, why don't you do a video on, I don't know, making a keychain? And I'm thinking to myself, I just did one of those 3 weeks ago. But maybe they didn't see it, maybe they're new to it, whatever the case may be. So it's a way of addressing that. I hear a lot about traditions out of Oklahoma, and everything I've read, I think that they're a good supplier. And, hey, Sherry, I see you're on there at Stateside. Oh, cool. But anyway, everything I hear, I think it's great. I think they do a good job. I wish they were nearby. That was one of the points I made the other day, is that if you've got a leather supplier near you, try to go in there and utilize them, because I don't want to pick a side of leather from, just clicking on the internet, send me a side of leather. And there are sides, you get into the, $300 sides, that ought to be the same every time you open the package. But, sometimes you don't know what you're going to get. So I'd rather pick them out, and I'd rather build a relationship with them. And, so anyway, let's see here. And then I think I saw it here, pretty much stopped getting stuff out of SPL, Springfield. Is that Springfield leather? Is that what you're saying? Yeah, I've bought some stuff from them, but what I find is I like to buy from just a couple places, and I've said it before. I'll keep a list going here of things that I need, so that and it's by group, by like things I buy from, say, Buckle Guy, and I buy from Buckle Guy, and their minimum's $100 for free shipping. So as I'm using up hardware, I'll keep a list of stuff that I will need soon, and then I can add that to something that I have to have right away so they can get it shipped. SB foot, new colors are expensive. I haven't seen those. The stuff that I've bought has usually been, browns and black. That's the majority of what I end up buying are those two. I need to look and see what kind of colors they got. Once again, it'd be nice if I could go in and look at that, And I see here, Sherry's in downtown Phoenix. I see here, upset on how long it takes to ship to me, 7 days. And I don't know who you're talking about specifically, but the issue that I did have one reason why I started looking elsewhere is one of my favorite suppliers just couldn't get stuff shipped in a reasonable time frame. And you'd get into a spot where you're like, you're used to, I don't know, it always takes a week or less. And so, I don't wait till the last minute. I'm ordering like 10 days out. And then you're watching, it hadn't shipped. You send an email, oh, that should go out today. Then 2 days later, you're looking, it hadn't gone out yet. And then it's going in the mail now, and it's the date that I actually need it. So now I'm trying to figure out how to either stall my customer, which could be a family member, but my customer, or trying to find another way around it. And I don't try to, I try not to run out of things. I've got too much. I've got too many buckles. I bet you I've got 40 pounds of buckles over there. Yeah. So anyway, that's one thing that led me to, change, away from one of the suppliers I was using on a regular basis, was that. And then, Tandy, if I go down to their store, and here in Arizona I can, in Colorado I can't, but if I go down to their store, I can look through and maybe find some things there. But I made a clutch for my daughter, and then I had to try to figure out how to redo it because the clasp broke about the third time it was used. It was even before I shipped the thing. It was broken. I was showing it and playing with it and looking at it and making sure I liked it and this, that, and the other, because I spent a pretty good length of time making the thing, and then the clasp broke. And I'm like, really? I mean, that's really disappointing. And I went in there and I complained, and they gave me another one. I don't know that it's going to be any better or not. And I saw that Gary, I think he was saying, yeah, no group text messages. Those, there are some times where that's good if you've got critical information, you're trying to get to a group of people in a fast manner. But just to do that, especially if I did that saying, hey, I'm over here, I just think that's wrong. Plus, when I send the text message, I send it specifically to, hey, Gary, I'm back over here, and blah, 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 and, so on and so forth. And I tell people also, if, you have any issue with anything that I made, or if you need help with anything else, then, let me know. Yeah, I don't typically, someone's probably saying it, that wasn't 10 minutes. I'm usually not 10 minutes between coats on this. 4 or 5 minutes, especially on the first coat. It soaks into the leather pretty quickly. I'll give a little bit more time here on this second coat. I do appreciate support. I've got people that watch every one of my videos, and I'll apologize now if I'm encroaching on your time with this long video or live stream. And yeah, I like having you here, but I don't want it to be obtrusive. So if you got to go, by all means go. But I do appreciate you taking time to be here. So the thread here where I tied this knot, if you just lay these in here like this, my experience is there's a good chance that may telegraph through and you see those lines later. So what I do is I will line them up and lay them on top of the threads. It's harder to do without it on top of the workbench. But I'll stack it on top of that thread, and then I'll tap it down tight. And I think then you're going to have less of a chance of that showing. Depending on the length of the rivet that we're using, you may need to insert those before you do these 2 layers, but the post on the ones I'm going to be using will work fine on this length. Okay. Let's see here. Tips on inlay work. I haven't really done a whole lot of inlay work. I guess the exclusion to that is like the snakeskin belt that I made here, and then the one that I finished the other day that I've got to work on the video. I guess you'd call that an inlay. I see a lot of people that do, I guess they call it like filigree work. I've not done any of that, where you have this whole design that you cut out. I'm interested in it, but I haven't ventured into that yet. That's, I think I have that much patience, but that's a lot of patience to cut those out. But other than that, I haven't really done a whole lot of inlay work. And someone was asking about the Leather Machine Company sander burnisher. Let's talk about that for a second. Close your eyes because I'll spin you across the room here. So the sander burnisher, I use the sander on it all the time, and I very rarely use the burnisher. I see people use it all the time, but in making belts, I know I can burnish the edge of a belt faster than here. I will say I haven't taken it off because you can buy another sander adapter to go on there, and I could put another sander on there. I don't know what I would gain by doing that. I could put another grit. But you know, one day maybe if my shoulder bothers me too much, then it'll just take me longer, but I can still burnish using this. But yeah, and it's reversible. It'll run in either direction. There's a switch down here on the back, and then it's variable speed. And I have it turned, I think, just about all the way down for the sanding. If it's on high, it'll actually burn the edge of the leather instead of just sanding that. And I need to, I've got a plan to put a dust collector on here that hooked to the shop vac for when I'm sanding to cut down on the dust off of it. I didn't think I'd use it all that much, but I use it quite a bit. Now, the sewing machine. At the end of the live stream, I was talking about the sewing machine, you know, asking if I have the right sewing machine. And that wasn't like just drama. You know, I do wonder sometimes because really I'm probably not going to sew anything on that sewing machine that's less than 4 ounces. And I think on some of the bigger ones, you can put smaller needles to a point on the bigger ones on there, but really the Cobra 26, I've been extremely happy with the Cobra 26. It's done everything I've asked it to do. I have not made any holsters or sheaths with the Cobra 26. And I don't know that, especially some of those that have a pretty good sized welt in them, it's not going to be enough muscle to do that. But for me, I don't make, if I was making, you know, dozens of those, then I think it would be different. Then I would probably need a bigger sewing machine for that. But I may make a dozen in a year. And in that case, you know, I can hand sew those, and it doesn't take very long to hand sew them. And I know I'm going to get the stitches exactly where I want them. And since I make so few of those, I'm afraid I would go through all the trouble to get to that point, and then I'd mess up the sewing with the machine. Anyway, that's enough on that. I saw someone asked about the width of the belt. It's interesting. When I first started, you know, I have preconceived notions of what everybody's going to want. And 1.5 inch belt, I didn't think they'd want that much of. The 1.25 inch I figured would be popular, and the 1 inch would be popular. I really have made very few 1 inch belts. I've got a couple people that have bought multiple belts, different colors in 1 inch belt, but the 1.25 inch and 1.5 inch, and with these patterns that I make, people tend to look at them and say, I like that 1.5 inch belt. And I don't think it's too wide. I mean, I'm not a skinny guy. I realize that. This belt here, it's a 38-inch belt, but the person had, the first belt I made for them, this is a repeat order, the first belt I made it for them was 1.25 inches, and they said, I like the width that you made. So 1.25 inches it is. But at this point, I would say it's 8 out of 10 or 1.5 inch belt. So, all right, this is set up enough. Let me make sure you see where I'm at there. I think you can. I'm just looking, reading here. I don't have any experience in that Bedro leather. So other people, it looks like they're answering those questions there. I will tell you, I made a tote earlier, well, it was last year in the spring, that was out of some more expensive oil tan leather. And I tell you what, that bag, it blew me away. I almost just kept it. It felt so nice. I like that one. My wife, she's probably watching right now, and she's like, I'm almost tired of hearing about it. But it just really was a nice. Making sure I got the right end here. It just had a really nice feel to it. Kind of a waxy, oily, but in a good way feel. So I'm just lining these edges up here. And I drag it along with these two fingers here on the side to keep it lined up. Seems like it works pretty well for me. And I've said it before, when you get this layered up, I really encourage you to tap it down with a hammer at least, every couple of inches. Because if you try burnishing it, I did that early on, and it just kind of worked a wrinkle in it and pushed it off the side, kind of like if you were rolling something heavy across carpet. I guess you could burnish light and then work up to it, but I attacked it like I do some things, and it shifted, and then it was hard to get back apart. Alrighty. So we're layered up here. If you've got any glue on the edge, before you go to the sander, just run this, and I don't know that I do, but just run your eraser down the sides there. It's easier to remove the glue that way than to try to sand through it. And I'm pretty good here. I'll just do a quick sanding down through here. I had someone ask me if I ended up with wavy edges from doing this, and I've not experienced that. I start and I'm moving before it impacts the sander, and I pull away from it while I'm still moving. So I'm not like sitting in one spot. So I'm not taking a bunch off of that. All right, there's where we're at. So I'm going to fold this over here. Let me make sure I know where I'm at to the center of this belt pattern. So this one was 19, so it actually needs to be moved down just a little bit. Right, 30, sorry, no, 37. Sorry, I had you bigger than you were. 37. So that's 18 and a half. 18 and a half, yep, right there. So I'm in the center now. I'll mark here. And then I'm going to mark over here 3.5 inches from there. I'll just put a little mark with the tape measure. Find the center. Round end. Not like Alaska Gary's where I put the English point on the end there. Okay. 37, add 10. So 47. Mark that. English point, 1.25 inches. And if you're starting off, I mean, I started off without these English points. I cut them by hand, but it didn't take very long where I'm like, you know, this is a lot of frustration because you nick a little bit, you look at it, it's off a little bit, so you nick a little bit over there. Now that doesn't look quite curved, so you try to, next thing you know, you're making a belt for someone that's smaller. You know, I just use the 1.5 inches. I'm glad I got, see, you can see I use the 1.5 inches on there. I'm used to using 1.5 inches. It's been, I'll bet you it's been 6 months since I made an 1.25 inch belt. That looks better. I'm going to use, this one's a Tandy craft tool edger here. And I don't round my edges until after I've done this because I want to make sure I hold this level and I don't want it slipping up on a rounded surface. And I'm looking here to see, I don't want an equally spaced, if these are that far apart, I want to make sure this one's further apart. If they're equally spaced there, to me it's kind of a funny look. Yep, I think that's about right. That light color line is going to go away when I put clear on here. Part of it's going to be covered up with the black thread. But that light color line will go away because that's the color of the die before we put the clear on it. And these groovers, if you keep them honed, and not wait for them to get dull, they'll last a lot longer. And to hone those, I just take on my stropping board. You can see here where I've done it, and I run it backwards. Just a couple passes there will hone that up. All right, back over here. Boy, who makes a mess in here? I'm going to take this microphone and move it over here a little bit. I think it might get loud when I'm doing this. I don't know if it does or not. When I'm editing video, I'm usually turning it down in the section where I'm doing hammer work. So I started off with one here at the point. I had someone ask, James, was that you? Someone asked about using a round punch in the corner as opposed to using the single. This is a round punch and that's a single. It does make a truer corner there. Out of habit, this is where I started there. So it does make a difference. I don't know if it's earth shattering, but I do kind of like that look there on those corners, but on these two that I made. I do appreciate the tips. I listen. So I start off with the single, and then I just measure over, and then do those two, and then I march around here to this straightaway, and then I'll go to the 6 tine. I almost never use that 4 tine. I've used it on some wallet making, but the 6 or the 5 millimeter I think is a little bit big for wallets. I guess it depends on the size of the wallet. I think I covered all those topics. Let me look at the comments real quick here. I see some questions there about the holsters there, and the holsters I've made, almost everybody's asked for a pancake style holster. And maybe that's partially because I have more examples of those, but almost all of them are a pancake style, and I like that style. I guess it kind of goes in line with me making the pancake knife sheaths that I make as well. So it's something I'm comfortable with and can I figure out, and I'm able to. To me, I like the holster to be canted forward a little bit there, so that the gun is easier to pull out, to the front. And I also feel like that if it's canted forward a little bit, that if someone comes up from behind and grabs a hold of that pistol, I know what someone's gonna say. That's a good way to end up dead. Yeah, that wouldn't be good, because that's a pretty aggressive move towards you. But if they grab a hold of that pistol and it's canted forward a little bit there, I feel like it helps it. It makes it harder for them to remove it from you. So anyway, I've got a chest rig that I need to get designed for a gentleman that I know. The hardest thing for me with holsters is I feel like I need the gun. I have to have the gun to make a proper holster. And I think I've bought 2 blue guns. And if I have to do a blue gun, then I just add that cost to the cost of making that holster, and that's the price there. I asked the person afterwards, if they want it, and surprisingly, most of them are like, no, I don't need that. So now I have a couple of blue guns in inventory to be able to make from. But it has kept me from making, some for other people out of state, because if they don't want the blue gun, cost in there, and I guess I don't have to tell them the cost is in there, but it does make it a little bit more expensive. The thing I would say, if you're looking at a sewing machine, you need to figure in the fact that you're going to need to buy some other accessories to go with it. When I bought the Cobra 26, I don't know, it came with 3 or 4 bobbins, but if anybody's used a sewing machine much, they're going to know 3 or 4 bobbins isn't going to be enough. I think I bought a dozen bobbins twice, and that's about enough for me with the number of colors that I use. I just have to remind myself to be building bobbins whenever I'm using the sewing machine, because otherwise you end up with needing one and you don't have any of that color or that weight. Most of the colors I have in 2 different weights. I always start back here at the tip, going back that way, because if I'm going to have any variation in stitch length, I'd rather have it on the bent back part of the belt. So, how long have I been doing leather work? Usually someone wants to know that. Let's see, I'm looking here. Unrelated to how, what leather is enough. I'm gonna cover that topic first here. So this isn't me. This is Don Gonzalez. Don is not a fan of dipping the leather piece into water and getting it wet, and then waiting for the casing to dry down to the right one. He works it in until he feels like he's got enough moisture in there, and he'll let it sit while he's talking or whatever. He'll apply moisture kind of in the beginning, and then just as you go. And he bases it off of just experience of, and it would be easy to do if you took a scrap and you just kind of did different amounts of moisture in it and feel where it works fine for you. You can tell if you're watching what you're doing when that leather starts to dry out. It doesn't get a nice burnish. It doesn't tool as nice, and then it doesn't usually take much. I keep a squirt bottle here and a sponge, depending on what it is, and I'll mist a little bit more on there as I go and just kind of keep ahead of it there. So I think it's easy to get too much moisture in there, and then your pattern isn't as crisp and defined. So how long have I been doing leather work? I don't know if I ever really answered that question thoroughly. I guess part of it is, the new guy at the block, he doesn't know anything. But I've been making belts now, I guess 4 years is when I first started making belts. And I've got a big family, so I made belts. I told that story before, but I made some for one brother, and I'm like, if I make for him, I'll make for somebody else. And then they like that, and you work through your brothers, you work through your brother-in-laws, you work through your own children. Then you got sisters and sister-in-laws, and so you work your way through. I've got one sister-in-law I still haven't made anything for. I was supposed to make a Bible cover for her, but she doesn't want to be away from her Bible that long. I need to go get some measurements, and I can probably do most of it without the book, and then get the book and fit it in the end. But so I was a lot of projects in before I ever sold the first one, and my first belts, I'd be the first to admit, I don't think they're the quality that I make today. The stitching I don't think was nearly as clean, and some of the finished details I've learned as I went, but that's it. So, and I've made more belts than anything else, and I've said I would rather just make belts. I suppose I could narrow it down to there, but then I think the channel would be less interesting if all I was doing was making belts. But the other thing is, the other items in my artisan booth, it brings other people in, and they'll maybe be attracted by the tote sitting on top and then be looking at belts. And then I'll usually hear, my husband really needs a belt, or my boyfriend really needs a belt, or son, and we start, down that line of conversation. So. And I was talking with, I'm going to throw you out there, Dean. I was talking with Dean the other day about, leather, and he buys a lot of single bends. That's one side of the cow, but it's the choice part of that cow. He buys a lot of those, and I think it's predominantly Herman oak is what he uses. And it's good leather. There's no doubt about it. The leather that I tool with in Don Gonzalez's class, that's all he uses is Herman Oak. I don't know if they give it to him, but I think that's his sponsor on that, and he buys stuff from Herman Oak. And he uses a lot of leather, but it's good stuff. And I use other leather as well. I've used, probably the one I've used the most has probably been Sapichi, and I bought that from both Aaron Heiser and Montana Leather, and I think it works good. I've had people say it doesn't burnish like the Herman Oak, and I don't know. It probably is a little bit of a difference. Part of that I think really comes down to making sure that that your project is deep enough for a good burnish, because if it's thin, it just seems like, for me anyway, I have a hard time getting a good burnish if the leather's thin. Black thread here along the side. That spool I started in December. So I've used a bunch off of that in that length of time. I'll probably I'll be out of that by June, I would guess. I'll need another spool. That's 500 meters. 2, 3 and a half. And what needles do I use? Everybody knows. When I've got thread that long, a lot of times I'll keep that, because there's some keepers that I make that don't have stitching along the sides, and I'll use it sometimes for that. Or if I'm just tacking something down and no one's going to see the color. After a while, though, I usually end up just throwing it away because I don't want to clutter the work area. Make sure, look at my order here, make sure. Black, yep. All right, so usually I start on that side. I'll move you again. Maybe it's better if I do this. All right, sorry about that movement. And I'll just equal these out on both sides. This stitching, I think, goes quicker because the leather's a little stiffer and it's not flopping around as much. You know, a lot I see here, I think it's James talking about watching how quickly the water soaks into the leather, and there's no doubt about that. What I find is after a while, you learn, after you get it to the right amount of moisture, then you have a little timer in your head, and you know when, you know, it's been 10 minutes, so I just do a little mist, and then I just go right back to working, and I do that about every whatever period of time, and it keeps it in the zone for the tooling. Your Tigeritza thread, running water is 1 millimeter. It's a nice thread. I've got 1.2, but I'll also have some of the 0.6, and I use it on, I've used it a few places. I've used it on some smaller design patterns because it, you know, if you're making smaller turns and such, I've done some like applique type work, and I've used that because it's a little bit more defined. And but the 0.08 is what I use on almost everything. And when I first started off, I was purchasing these, you know, these spools here, and, you know, hand stitching these belts. I go through them pretty quick, and so it only took buying a couple of those. I'm like, this doesn't make sense, because I think really, if you do the math on it, the number of spools to the big spool, it's about half the price per yard. And so I just bite the bullet, and when I ran out of the color in the small spool, then I'll buy a big spool. And it was interesting, when I bought that big spool of white, I opened it up, was looking at it, and I'm like, I'll never use that whole spool of white. And where did I set it? There it is. So this is what I have left, and that's been 2 years ago. So, I mean, I don't use it up as quick, obviously, as the black, but I use quite a bit of it. And so on all the colors now, I just go ahead and I just buy the big spool. I suppose there's some that I wouldn't, but like the blues, I've got a big spool of 3 different blues. Be cautious about one thing. Depending on, I don't know why it's not standard, but one supplier, this is medium blue, and one of them this is. Well, this is what I wanted. And when I looked in the photo, I thought it looked a little bit odd, but it said medium blue, so I bought it, and it's this. I don't like this color of blue really at all. So it'll take a while to use that up. I typically use that, once again, if it's a place where you're not going to see the thread, then I'll use that. Like if I was hand sewing a tote, the thread on the inside, I'll use that blue. Try to get it used up, but I really don't like that. Maybe somebody else out there likes that color blue. And then, Dean, this isn't a commercial, but the thread, you buy that spool of thread at the Buckle Guy, and that spool of thread is, I think I was looking yesterday, I think it's $41 for that 500 meter spool of thread, and on Weaver it's like $58. So that's a huge difference. But that's where I ran into that, was the Buckle Guy doesn't carry that medium blue that I really like there, that rich medium blue. They've got that other light blue. So that big spool, I had to buy that from Weaver because they don't have the same one. And I even asked them, are you going to get that in? And they're like, we've got the colors we're going to carry. So sometimes when it's catching on the bottom of the belt, I'll just run it through with a belt loop here on my side and get that tail out of the equation. I think I'm in the screen fine here. Yeah, well, the stitching is. Anyway, I just run that through the side, and it keeps that out of the way, keeps them catching on there. And then this turnbuckle down here on the bottom, I ran packing tape from the bottom of the workbench around that and back up to the workbench again, so that the thread is less likely to get hooked on there. So now that I said that, it'll probably get hooked behind that anyway here. I see people interacting between each other there. I appreciate that. One, it helps pass the time here while I'm doing this. But two, I won't profess to be an expert on any of this. I'll tell you how I do it. I'll tell you why I do it. But there are a lot of extremely knowledgeable people in the leather industry with a lot more experience than me. And I guess the only difference is I go ahead and I put myself out there. See, got up there anyway. I put myself out there to make the videos, and my hopes really, I've said this, but it's been a while, but my hopes are that I encourage you to get out and try something that maybe you've always wanted to try. I mean, here I am. I don't have all that much experience, and I'm making what people like. And it may not even be this. Maybe it's basket weaving or pottery, whatever it is, but throw yourself out there and, take a chance to learn something. One of my brothers is thinking about retiring, and he's looking at Leathercraft, so as a hobby. So that's cool. That'd be fun to have someone to share ideas with. I've said it a few times, and I had someone reach out to me and said that they're, I guess it's about 15 miles from where we're at here, but I do need to create a little network of people here in Arizona to get together and talk. I just think it's, interesting to have that, and that's one reason why I think the live stream is interesting, is I get to interact, more than just responding to comments. And I appreciate the comments on regular videos here. Yeah, you're right. It looks like sky blue, but on their website it says medium blue. I don't think it. I pick up a lot of color and discolor white thread. That was a question on there. I mean, here's a good example. We just put it through, freshly dyed and sealed leather, and I think it did pretty well. I had a lot of extra thread there, more than I normally do. I don't know, maybe I miscounted there, but I usually, on white thread, on leather that's been dyed, I try to have about a foot off each needle that's left over at the end to get rid of that. Most of the color is in the first 4 or 5 inches. The one thing I would say that the exception to that, and I mentioned it earlier, but you may not have been here, when I'm going to use white thread, if I was doing white thread on this edge, I would probably completely finish the belt all the way. I would do my edge cutting, my edge burnishing, all of my coats of finish. I would have it completely done before I put that white thread through it, so that I minimize chances of, adding color to it through the process of putting finishes on here. And I know a lot of people say that's one reason why they airbrush their finishes on. I just don't really want to deal with the overspray, and I've used airbrushes before. I know it's not nearly as much as some things, but I've got a system that works, and I think until it doesn't, then I'll probably just stick with this method. I should count this. I guess I could just measure it and do the math, right? There's about 4 stitches an inch, or is that how many it is? And then you could do the math. How many stitches there? Someone's going to be, someone that's just sitting there, they can use their phone and calculate that for me. How many times am I pulling that thread through there? So there are 6 stitches, easy for you to say. There are 6 stitches in an inch, and this belt is 38, but that means 48. So I guess I could probably come close in my head here. 48, well, let's just say 50. So then both sides, that's 100. So 600 stitches on a belt. Somebody check my math there. I think that's about right. So we can take 40 off. 560 stitches on the edge, and then another, 300 stitches in the middle. Is that right? Oh, HR manager's going to be on site soon. Guess better get everything put away. I use crappy old thread too. I've tried the new stuff. I use crappy old thread. Same stuff I always used. I bought some thread from, let me think. It was Tandy, black, but it wasn't woven. It was, I think, twisted. I didn't like it. And it was super sticky, hand sticky and all of that, and super sticky. And I just didn't like how that worked out. Let me give you a little different perspective. I know there's a handful of you have been here the whole time. I do appreciate you hanging along here. The challenge was on that snakeskin belt that I had the short on. I said I had about 4 hours in it. And where am I at on this? There's got to be a count here somewhere on my screen. I guess I can look up there. Geez, you guys have hung with me. I appreciate that. It's been 2 hours and 15 minutes. And I've got finished this stitching here, edge work, finish my keeper, and mount the buckle. I don't typically stay on the belt the whole time. Like I said, I'll wander off and put something different on TV or go grab a snack. I actually put a couple snacks behind me in case I ran out of it. Or got hungry, I should say. Ran out of my breakfast. I can see I've got a little bit of a funny wrinkle in the back, so I must have that liner. Must have been cut a little further down in the belly there. It's a shame I didn't notice that before I cut it to length, because it was a long enough strap, I probably could have removed that. And I'll say this too. Somebody's probably going to ask, have you ever made a belt and then, yeah, I've made a belt and didn't like how it turned out at the other end. And if it's my size, it goes onto my rack and I wear it as a work belt. And if it's not my size, I've cut them in half and threw them in the trash, obviously without the hardware. I did use some thread I bought from Land Leather in Indianapolis, some of the main thread company, and it's a little lighter weight. And I don't remember, I was using it on a belt. It was a burgundy color, and I broke it like 3 times. I'm probably pulling harder than you need to pull. It probably doesn't need to be, the way I'm doing it. But I get used to doing it in a rhythm that I'm used to doing and moving along in a fairly quick manner, like I'm doing. And I have to change my touch, I suppose, but I don't know. There's definitely some colors in there that you don't have in the Tiger Ritza line, so I think there's some advantage to that, and there's some finer ones there, but I think the spool is right here in the top of this disastrous toolbox. Oh, it's not that one. I bought a few different ones while I was there. This is twisted wax cord. The other one wasn't that. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know where it's at. Anyway, those are pretty coarse as far as, thicker is what I mean to say. I don't mean in a negative way. But yeah, I broke it a couple times and then I'm like, I'm not using that. I probably ought to get rid of some of the things that I don't use because it clutters up the space. I'm probably missing comments here. And I don't know if you're asking between each other. Bowmaker, if you're asking me if I always hand stitch my belts or if you're asking somebody else. But all of my belts are hand stitched. It's my hang up. It's not anybody else's hang up. That's the way I've been doing it, and that's how I sell the belts. So to me, to change that now would be kind of like, you know, Coca-Cola changing their recipe on their drink, and then you alienate the people that liked it that way. So I happen to enjoy the hand stitching. I like it a lot, and so as long as I can do that, that's what I'm going to do. I could machine stitch this, there's no doubt. And I've done dog leashes that are this long or longer. I've done tote handles that were 32 inches by the time it wrapped down around the bottom of the tote. And I've ran those in a sewing machine. So it's not an ability thing. It's the marketing, I guess, is the best way to say that I decided, well, I started out of necessity, right? I didn't have the sewing machine when I started. But I'm hesitant to change that because I'm not 100% sure why people buy the belts they buy from me. Do they buy them because they love my belts? Do they buy them because of my personality? Well, that's probably not it. And I don't want to change that. And I'm not saying, you know, there's no doubt that when you use a machine stitch, it's 2 threads and they don't cross over to the other side. So they're down through there. So if you cut 1 thread, you can zip undo those. And I've tried to remove these hand-stitched threads, and you almost have to cut every one of them out, and you're digging them out. I mean, they're in there tough. But once again, this belt, it really doesn't, the thread doesn't have a big job to do here. It's really more decorative than anything else. I mean, it is holding the 2 layers together, and we can have that whole debate about whether the belt should be 2 layers or not, or whether that's needed or not. But anyway, that's the reason why I do it, and most of it's because that's how I've always done it. Yeah, James says belts take too long. It takes some time, there's no doubt about it. When I first started doing it, it took a lot longer because I didn't have a stitching pony to hold the belt, so I'm holding it with one hand, and I'm sewing just with one hand. So locate it, put it through here, pull the thread through, find a spot to stick this needle out of the way, pick up the other needle, go back the other way, then back from the back to the front, set that needle down. And you understand, you know, kind of a leapfrog method through the belt. And it was, it had to be every bit of twice as long to do that. The one thing, I do have a stitching horse behind me here that Wayne gave me. I do appreciate that, Wayne. Every time I see it, I think of you there. But and I've used that before. I can take that in, sit in the living room, maybe watch TV, you know, with the HR manager, and you know, get something done as well. But anymore, by the time I get, I usually spend pretty much the whole day in the leather shop, sometimes futzing around. And I did look that up, Dean. That is in the New English Dictionary, and it came from 1930. And they think it was short for to fart around, meaning to killing time. But anyway, yeah, I mean, I just enjoy doing it. So I'll probably hand stitch, like I say, until I can't do it anymore. I could probably, how long do you think it would take to stitch this on a machine? It wouldn't even take 5 minutes. It would be less than 20% of the time it took to make the holes. I don't know how long that took me, if anybody was timing that segment of it. I'll have to go back and watch this afterwards and see how long it took to do each thing. But I think it takes me about 15 or 20 minutes, probably not even 15 minutes to put the holes in there. It wouldn't take that long to sew it. Yeah, at this point, I'm afraid to switch to machine stitching and find out that's what everybody liked was my hand-stitched belts. But it is interesting. I had, I was telling during the live stream that I was really happy to get that stitching horse because I take that with me to my artisan shows, and I'll always have a belt in there, and I'm hand sewing it. because I will ask somebody, have you seen my belts before? And they'll either say yes or no. And I said, well, then let me show you. And then I'll hand them one of the belts and I talk about it and I'll say, everything there is hand done. I cut the leather out of a complete side of leather. You don't have to do that. You can buy straps, but just the way I do it. And then I dye it, and then I create the patterns. I hand stitch it, and I'll say there is zero machine work anywhere near this belt. It's all done by hand. And I guarantee you, at least a quarter of the time, we get about done talking about it, and they go, what kind of machine do you sew that with? And if it's a friend, I'll say, were you even listening to anything I was just saying? Because I'm like, I just told you, it's all done by hand. So anyway, it's fun to see their surprise on their face when they look at that as well. Oh, what do we got going here? Alaska Gary, I appreciate you being here. And you can come back and watch the rest of it or not. I just do. I really appreciate you taking time to be here. Hopefully you got some snow up there. You can get your snowmobile out and run in it some. And Dean's talking about that the hand stitching is hands down better. It's hard to make an argument that it's not a stronger stitch, but like I said earlier, probably don't need a stronger stitch here. It does resist wear better, in my mind, because even if you wear through a loop or two on here, I don't think it's gonna come apart on you, but the machine will. I get a little lost here. I don't know if you guys are talking to each other or to me, but am I in Arizona? I'm lucky enough, fortunate enough to run from the hot weather and the cold weather. So I'm a snowbird, and I spend the summer in Colorado and the winter in Arizona. And I do cross back and forth some, depending on what's going on, throughout the year. But that's where the majority of the time is. What else? Yeah, so I'll ask if anybody else. I did buy some, I bought some of the water buffalo when I very first started off, black water buffalo. I'll go ahead and say it was from Weaver. And I'm not sure if that stuff is milled on the front or not, but the front surface of it, it doesn't have the feel and look of real leather. And someone was saying on a forum somewhere that it's partially chrome tanned, partially veg tan, partially chrome tan. I'm not sure how that whole process would be. But the one thing about it is I was making 2-layer belts out of it, and it took one belt to realize that the back is sealed enough that even sanding it, I don't get a good bond between the layers with the, with the contact adhesive. So I would have to, when at first I didn't have that splitter, I did a bunch of sanding on the back to open up the pores to get the contact adhesive to stick to it. And yeah, so I thought it was an interesting leather because of the feel and look of it. It's got more of a, like I said, more of a finished, polished look to it. But as a result of that, in some ways, it didn't feel like, real leather, but I know it is. So you're in New England. And if you don't like the weather there, wait 10 minutes. So yeah, well, it's amazing all the places I've lived in the U.S., and that's a saying just about everywhere, except for when I was in Southern California. It doesn't change very often there. That was a long time ago, though. That's 35 years ago. Some parts of the country have gotten some snow they haven't gotten in a while. As a YouTube guy, I follow some that's in Pennsylvania, and he was saying what he was wanting was a good old-fashioned snow year. He was saying early on, and I think now he's saying he's ready for the snow to be gone. What does they say? Careful what you wish for, you might get it. Yeah, I'm plenty old, Dean. Yeah, I used to wonder if I'd ever make it into my 60s, and well, here I am. And many would say, "Oh, that's still young." My mom used to say that. I may have to open the garage door, get a little air movement in here. I know, I'm getting ready to say it. It's kind of hot here today. I'll tell you one thing, that doing this stitching this way, when I would do it in my lap, I don't know how often I would look back and I would have a knot or a little loop here. It got caught on something and it didn't, right here, it's right here in front of me so I can see it. But I would end up with that. And then I've had that before where I was like 5 inches of digging that slack and pulling it all the way forward to get rid of it. But this is the stitching pony was the single best thing that improved my saddle stitching. It allowed me to replicate from one stitch to the next better than anything else that I'd done up to that point. I don't know if the HR manager's listening or not, but it'd be nice if you hit that garage door opener. We'll see. I can step over there and do it. So when I say HR manager, I say that as a compliment. I always said that the heart of the family is the mother. So she's got the HR part covered. I need a new battery in this. That's a topic. I tell you what, I see some topics about tools that are almost polarizing on Facebook, and this thread zapper, there are people either hate it or they love it. I have quite a bit of thread left over. I'll cut a little bit shorter one here on this next run. It does eat batteries. The batteries don't last very long in it, and it seems like it eats batteries even when you're not using it. Just sitting there, that the battery doesn't last very long. And when I first, I ordered it, and then I saw complaints about it, and comments about the tip burning out like weekly, that type of thing. And so on my next order, I bought that from Weaver. On my next order, I bought a package of 2 replacement tips, and I'm still using the same tip that I got when I got it. I don't know, it's been 3 years probably. When it's got a new battery in it, it'll heat up pretty fast. I don't hold the button down the whole time. It's like starting off in a car driving. Do you leave it floored, or do you feather it out? So I'll get it hot and then I'll work it some. I'll move you around here to the pretty side of the belt. Not me, the belt. Now this side, it's interesting. It must have to do with the twist in the thread. But when I work my way down through here, it starts to get a twist built up in the thread. So I either have to stop and untwist it, or I'll put a little counter twist to the needle like this, like that, about each time I do a stitch here. I'm doing it without anybody really seeing it, but I just twist it a little bit there, and that keeps that from getting that twist in there. But I don't know why it is. I don't know if it's because of the shape of the braid in this. I mean, to me, I'm doing the same thing, but yeah, it gets a twist in it. And when I would first do it, I would have to chase the twist out of the thread every so often. Let's see here. I like to have to use one. The one thing I would like to use, and you're right, on this, I could really just clip this off at like 1/8 of an inch and melt it down with the lighter. And I've got some lighters here, but out of habit, I just end up using the same thing all the time. But the lighter, you get on some things, and you may end up, seeing a little discoloration if you got too close to it with the flame. Yeah, rechargeable batteries is probably the way to go on that. The battery lasts me probably a month or 3 weeks, something like that. And I use it pretty often. So I just put a little battery in it and move on. It would be interesting to have that as a rechargeable. Now there's another, on Weaver's site, they've got another one there. And is it rechargeable? I think it might be rechargeable. And I've wondered about it, but I've read some reviews on that and people didn't like that either. I wonder if the owner of this belt is watching. He's a YouTube subscriber, but he doesn't watch as often. He could be out there. He may not realize he's looking at his belt being made. So I see your questions. Is anybody there misplaced scissors? Always looking for them? Yeah, that's a good question. I spend too much time in the shop looking for the knife or the scissors, and that new knife that I bought from Sean Woodsum, I really like it, but it's a lot of blade. This here's got a little, 1 inch of blade sitting right there, and but the blade on his is like, I don't know, 5 inches, 5.5 inches. And what I really need to make, it's like what they say, the plumber's faucets all leak, and the landscape guy's lawn is full of weeds. I need to stop long enough to make myself a tool belt, just a little something that I can attach to my side here that hold the scissors, the knife, you know, 3 or 4 of the things, tape measure, that I'm always turning to try to see where it was. But the other thing, though, is it makes you, it exercises your brain, because you're always trying to remember where you left something. And Dean, you start off by saying, no nap today. I think I've bore you to sleep here talking, have you get your nap in. I'm a few videos ahead, and I'm trying to remember if my topic I was going to bring up here, if I'm covering that this coming Wednesday, or if I already covered that. Yeah, I don't know. But the rotary punch from Weaver there, I had to order more tubes again, and it was about a year ago that I replaced 2 or 3 of the cutting tubes that were cracked and chipped. The thing I like about that rotary tool is the fact that the walls are thin. It doesn't make an enlarged hole when you use it. When you use a drive punch, those drive punches are tough. They cost less than the replacement tube on the rotary punch cost, but they make a bigger hole. And I realize that most of the time that hole is going to go back to its original shape, with time. It's just been, stretched out for a moment in time. But where I'm going with that is, I'm not sure I'm going to buy replacement tubes for that anymore. I think I may change. And I wonder if anybody's had any experience with the better CS Osborne. It's the 155 model, I think. They sell for about $100. Those are $150 at Weaver. And I'm wondering if anybody's had any experience with the 155 model. It's got a cast handle, not a punched or formed handle on it. And I'm really thinking about buying one of those. So I'll look here in the comments to see if anybody else there have any experience with the CS Osborne 155 model. I don't know the model of the other one. They have 2. They have a much less expensive one. The HR department invites you all assignments are complete. James, I can appreciate that. And I don't know if it's you. I've had a couple of people, maybe it's Dean. Someone keeps saying you should try the oblong hole punches for your adjustment holes on the belt, because, and I get it. It doesn't create as much stress where that hole is at on the leather, and then that domed up area over the tongue of the belt on the round hole that wears and shows, I guess you could call it premature wear on there. So I should try that, but my biggest concern is I see people say, how do you keep those aligned so you don't end with them, clocked a little bit, out of alignment with the edge of the belt? How do you do that? Is it just a visual thing? I guess I'm there with you, Dean, on the axe head, stamp from Barry King, trying to keep that thing aligned. I'm concerned about having the same problem with those adjustment holes, but having a bigger issue. That's the last thing I do. And I can just envision having one turned even a quarter turn. That would be horrible. There's no coming back from that. So I guess you make them all wrong if you make one wrong, or So does somebody have an idea on how they do that? And so you've given up on the CS Osborne rotary punch, Dean? Is that what you're saying? Did you try the more expensive model on it? This one here from Weaver, I mean, I've made thousands of holes with that thing, and it still operates nice. I just have to replace, 2 or 3 of the tubes a year, and the tubes are, I mean, by the time you pay shipping, they're like 20 bucks a piece. So, I mean, that's not inexpensive. And I even considered this last time, just buying the whole tool and then taking the good ones off of this one and keeping those until I needed replacements for the new tool, because if I watch and I buy that rotary tool on their Black Friday special when everything is 25% off, if I do it then 25% off, that's, is that like $32 off? So $115 for the tool. And then that would be 4 tubes or 5 tubes to get to that price by the time you pay tax and shipping on it. I think that's about right. Anyway, and I get it. You've seen me buy equipment. I've bought skivers and other things, so it's not that I have a problem spending money on tools, but it's really, I don't have a problem spending money on tools the first time, and then after that I had kind of have a problem with it. Let's see here. So you, James, you're saying you like the oblong punch on the adjustment holes? Is that what you're saying? I think that's what you're saying there. But I think they look nice. I'm just worried about keeping them aligned properly. Okay, so you put like a straight edge on the belt and then set them against that to keep them in place, I guess is what you're saying. I've looked at some of those centering devices that they make. They're like a sliding rule centering device, and I've thought about, you know, something like that as well. I think John may have left me running and went out to do something in the yard. I haven't seen a comment. You there, John? That's Brother John, not St. John. Anyway, just a 16th or 32nd off is terrible. Yeah, I mean, in the summertime in Colorado, I've got a gentleman that believe it or not, I didn't grow up in the construction industry. I worked for Sherwin-Williams selling supplies to people in the construction industry. But the gentleman up in Colorado, I actually spent a little bit of time doing construction projects with him. And where I'm going with it is, you know, I'll say, does that measure right? He said, it looks right. And I'll say, but does it measure right? And he goes, look, it can measure right and look wrong. If it measures right and it looks wrong, it's still wrong. It doesn't really matter. You know, so measurement is the first thing, but then you need to visually look at things and see if it looks right, because if it doesn't look right, then it's not. And those holes, early on, you know, I would lay out the holes and just go through there and punch those, and you can look at it, and if one of them is moved, a 16th definitely, but maybe even a 32nd of an inch different in spacing. I mean, it's obvious when you look at it. And, you know, maybe most people wouldn't notice that, but I'm making this for everybody, not just the people that wouldn't notice it. So the thing I like about the rotary punch is that when I go to use it, get this thread off of it there. When I go to use it, I'm able to put a mark on here where I want to center it. And I can line up over it and imprint and make just a light mark there. And you can see I'm off slightly, and I can correct that here. Check it again. And then when I've got that, I can line up on that impression, and I've got that hole exactly where I want it. And even if you're off just slightly there, you don't see that little imprint because it gets kind of pulled down in that hole that I just made. So that's my whole hang up on the oblong punch, is having it off. So Dean, do you use the oblong or do you use round hole? Yeah, the cardstock template, I tried using some cardstock templates, but the edges kind of get mushed a little bit. I suppose there's ways to do it. You know, and I hand cut all these straps. And typically when I cut a hide, I cut enough to fill this storage box down here that I use. Here. Thanks, Sharon Pace. She gave this to me. But I cut them and I put them in here. And the point of saying that is the next time I cut it, I could be off by a 32nd of an inch in width. So if I had made some type of a template that was like that you put on one side and it lined it up, you could end up, what I'm saying is you could end up a little bit off of center. And that's the reason why when I'm doing my tooling patterns and such, I run the wing divider down through the center of the belt, and then I flip it around and I go from the other side as well to ensure. So if I have any variance in the width, things like that, I'm able to account for that on the fly as I'm tooling. So maybe somebody says that's sloppy work, but I think that's making sure that you account for, you know, variances that, you know, I think just kind of happen. Like I'm looking at this spot here, I can see that one spot there. I've got a little bit of a wrinkle there, and that leather is not as tight in that one spot there, that one strip. Usually what I do is I cut down and I watch the wrinkles, and then I pull on the leather and make sure before I put it in the box. But this liner I've got has just a little bit of a soft spot right there. And so what I'll do, what I've done in the past, and I think it works pretty good, is I saturate that leather with like Resin, and I put some weight on it and try to hold that together. And I don't know, over time it may loosen up some. Typically when I've had that, that's been a coal belt. But I know who's getting this one here, and I can follow up, and if he has any issues, I can take care of it for him. I'll just say it this way, the price is right for him. You can figure out what that means. Are you asking me what size stitch groover I use? The size of it, I'm not sure what that is. It's just whatever comes in that Tandy stitch groover. And I did buy an expensive one from, let's see, what's the name of that company? Is it Ranch to Market or no, it's Ranch to Arena. The same person that makes my favorite hammer here, they've got this stitch groover here, and it takes a big bite. And I had someone, when I first showed it, say, you're probably not going to like the size of that stitch groover, and that the groovers, the replacement tips you can buy from, I don't know if it's C.S. Osborne or Barry King, but the ones you can buy, you can replace with that. And I've played with that some. I haven't used it very much. I haven't used it very much, and part of the reason is that the Tandy one, you can bear down on that thing, and it's only going to cut so deep because it's got that hole that it's cutting through. That one there, the first time I went to use it, and I was just testing, and I put quite a bit of pressure on that, and it cut a really deep groove. And maybe on some things you can use that. I've actually used that to trim leather to width. I just use it as a knife. But I need to practice more with it, because I think if you just get a little bit of a touch with it, then you can control that depth on there. But I do think I need to look and see about getting a smaller hole on that. Saskatchewan, huh? Working on a leather tablet case. I need to make a sleeve for a laptop, and I'm thinking about doing that same basket weave pattern that I did the journal covers out of. I do need to challenge myself to get away from that, something else as well. So, James, you said Osborne comes in 3 sizes. What size do you think more closely replicates, if you know, that Tandy groover? Because it doesn't cut a very deep groove, and I'm not overly worried about the depth of the groove. I use it to help align my stitching chisel, and then the thread does get pulled down into there. But once I get my stitching done and I tap these threads down on the edge, that further pushes those down in there. And I think this Tiger Ritza thread, it's going to take a lot of wear before it's gone. Oh, I see the pink hand waving at me. I appreciate you coming along. Yeah, this design, it's one of my favorite belts, and I can remember the first summer. Let me think about this. The first summer that I had some on display, I didn't sell very many of those, but I made a couple of different designs, and I had the sales on Memorial Day, 4th of July, and Labor Day, and on the Memorial Day, I didn't sell a single belt off the display. I didn't take any orders for this, what I call the Western belt. And I can remember coming home, I was a little frustrated and saying, and I didn't have a bunch, I had probably half a dozen belts. And I said, I don't think I'm going to make any more of those belts unless somebody orders one. I'm not going to make any, and because, no one was ordering those. And so, 4th of July, I ended up selling, I think, I sold like 2 belts off of the display, and I took an order for 10 belts, which is that's a nice weekend. That's enough work to keep me busy for 3 or 4 weeks of doing it while I'm doing other stuff. Every one of them was the Western belt, every one of them. And then people saw those on other people, and I've sold a lot of the Western belt, and I think it really comes out nice. I've done it in a lot of colors. The blue, I made one of each of like 3 sizes in the blue, and I haven't sold as many of those, but it looks really cool with blue jeans. All right, Dean, I'll be right here. We're making good progress, though. That's all the stitching left. After this stitching, then I've got edge work to do. Edge work. Finish the loop. I'll put a coat of Resin on here while I'm working on the loop, and then we'll come back and we'll mount this buckle. And I've been at it now. It's been 3 hours. I don't know if Dean's still there or not. I think I told him I could do it in 4 hours. That was the belt that didn't have any stitching in the middle. I don't know. I wish I'd kept track of it. I don't know if anybody kept track of it. So are you saying 1 millimeter groover? That's what you use there? Just for my numbers, make sure we're on the right thing. Oh no, I see 1 millimeter, and then I say I like using the 2 millimeter. Oh, for the 207 thread. I see. So you're sewing machine in that groove then? I've not sewn any project on the machine in an actual groove. That's a different thought. I'm either using the guide on it, or I used just the creaser to make a mark to follow. I figured if I got out of the groove, you'd definitely see that. And if I was, anyway, most of it's been on that sewing machine. I've made totes and dop kits, some handles, and a couple of clutches, and I made some weekender bags. I've got one over here. I need to finish it. I intend to put a binding on here. I need to do that. And then this has a tab of leather that goes on there. And then that bag is finished. And it's been that way for a year. Yeah, I made 4 of those bags, and 3 of them I gave to my children, and they all had custom color thread on it. And I was making a video of it, and I knew if they saw they saw one with like red thread or blue thread, they would think, oh, it was near Christmas, that's my gift. So I made that one to use in the video, and at the same time I was making the others as well, and gave those away. Hand thread 1 millimeter. Okay, I appreciate that. Brilliant Leather, I appreciate having you along there. I hope you're having a good weekend in the shop as well. Yeah, you see it plain as day if you get out of that groove. And I've done it even with setting hand chisel marks. And that's a topic what I've done before is if I get a little bit out, then what I will do is I'll overlap that by like 3 and do the next set, kind of like pulling it back in line a little bit. If it's a dark thread like this, most people aren't ever going to notice that. You're going to know it's there. Like I've said before, I think every project I've made, well, I shouldn't say everyone. There's been like a half a dozen that I've looked at, and I said, at that point, I'm like, that's my best work I've ever had. But it seems like I've always got something that's, it's maybe a misplaced stitch, or I cut something the length a little bit different. Like this one's going to be that liner. That's going to drive me nuts because I already know that you're going to see it happen. But when I get around there to trying to round that edge, that leather is not going to want to cut right. I may have to skip that spot and get some resin in it to get it firmed up and come back and finish that. So that'll be it on here of what the issue is. I need to go through that liner stuff and make sure, because I've had those before where I cut the strip and then I look at it, I don't like it, and I pitch it off in one corner, and I'll cut it in half, or I'll cut out the bad spot and put it in the short piece box and use it later. But that shouldn't have been in there. Great one here for my live stream, huh? That's nice. I try to be real. When I'm doing videos, I try not to, hide mistakes. I'll call them out or show them or whatever. I don't, unless it's a bad enough one where I have to throw it away. But last summer I made a wallet for a gentleman out of California. And he was watching at the time, and I made a video, and then in the process of making it, I made a couple of errors on cutting, and I'm like, oh, well, I'll just turn it and use it this way, and then I'll just next thing you know, the wallet didn't close right, and so the title of the video is, here's what went wrong. I think that's about what it is. And so I explained how I got to that point. And then I was working on making it the correct way, and I got a text from him. He's like, hey, before you ship that wallet, can you show me what you got? And so I knew he had seen that, and I talked to him about it. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to send anything that's not right. Plus, if I send it to you and you don't like it, then I'd rather you just say something, and I'll either make it again, to correct it, or I'll send you your money back. But he was happy with the wallet that I made, and the wallet came out right, and I learned in the process as well. Yeah, a sharp groover is really important. Early on, I'm trying to get everybody use out of that groover, not realizing how easy it is to kind of hone it a little bit as you go. And I'd end up with one. Boy, I didn't leave any extra thread here, did I? But anyway, yeah, you end up kind of just depressing the leather and making a mark. You don't really cut a groove. Yeah, I couldn't be 2 inches shorter here. I'd be in trouble. I wonder if I miscounted on the other one. because I had all that left over. I always, the one that's on the back now, I come from the back to the front and then back through. Pull this double over thread out of here. And the reason why I do that is I'm trying to spear the thread that's there so that when I melt this off on the back, that it's got more resistance to try to, pull through. I guess that makes sense. And I do that on that one first because this one here, then I'll spear through that there. All right, let's get over here and work on the edger and find out what kind of a problem I'm going to have to work with here with this soft edge leather. I've only had that happen, I think, this is like the second time because I'm usually pretty careful about that, but that one got away from me. Let me move you back here. All right, so here we are. I think it's looking pretty good. I do have to put my spots in yet. Let me show you this piece here on the back. It's a little bit soft there. All right, let's see how it cuts or doesn't. My run's number 3. And I start here where this folds over, I start right there. I just sharpened these the other day. See, you can kind of see it's trying to mush a little bit. It's good that I just sharpened this because that gives me a little bit of an opportunity there. And here it is again. Yeah, that's not great. I'll work some Resling in there. I don't think I'm going to be able to, or I don't think it's going to be a problem where I can't save it. So I switched then to a 2 from here around here. It probably doesn't make much difference, but I think it makes a cleaner finish if these edges don't have that big gap in there. The first set of edgers I had were some Tandies that were the individual ones that go into the handle and you adjust them, and I thought I knew how to sharpen them, and they aren't they don't have the same geometry to them, I guess is the easiest way to say it. And they were the most frustrating thing as far as tools that I had. And the first time I went to Pendleton, my wife was like, what is it you need to, what are you looking for? And I had a list of things. I'm like, these are the must-haves. These are the like-to-haves. And proper edge tools were on my must-have side. And I walked down to Barry King's booth, and he was, there were people like 5 deep all the way around that booth. I don't know how much money that guy brings in at a show. It's a huge amount of money. And I went, I'd seen the tools down at Ron's Tools. Toby's the owner, and I saw him sitting there, and I'd walked by it and had thought, those are pretty nice, but his were clearly marked the price, and I was like, at first, a little bit of sticker shock on the price. So I walked back down there, and I had a pocket full of veg tan leather squares that I thought were some of the tougher leather to edge. Let me grab a little water, I'll be right back. Anyway, I guess I can still talk. I got my microphone on. But I walked up and I said, do you mind if I try these? He goes, no, try any of them you want. And he's like, here's some leather. I said, no, I brought my own. I guess I grew up used to the whole carnival, thing where, they make things look, that knife that will cut a can and a half, and then, you know, whatever. You know where I'm going with that. And I tried it, and when I cut it, it just glided along there. And my wife, I wish I was making videos back then and she was filming it. She says, just the expression of relief. She goes, I knew you were buying that. And I ended up buying, and I bought a tool from him that I haven't really used much. I need to take it to him when I go up there to the Prescott Leather Show, because he'll be there. But I ended up buying 3 of these, and I bought, where did it wander off to here? I bought this groover here from him at the same time. And each of those tools were $100 a piece, and then this attachment here for this edge groover was like another $20. And you probably can't see, but this one here will probably cut better because this leather's pretty stiff. But when you would, well, that's the other thing. It's backwards for me. I guess I could probably swap that around. But anyway, I'll cut it here. But when you cut the groove that you make, well, I'm not cutting. There we go. So if you see that, it starts to do this, and then it bunches up, and then it stops cutting. And it's because of this this attachment on there. I'm not sure if I'm in the screen there, but when you make that cut, you can see how it starts to bunch up in here, and then it clogs in here, and then it backs up to here where you're not cutting. This cutting tool is fabulous, but this piece is a problem. And I need to go ask him if he's made a change to it. I've thought about trying to go in here and file some of this off in here. It probably doesn't need that much metal there, and maybe polish that. Maybe it would expel that out of there. But it cuts a nice groove. But I haven't used it much because of that. Anyway, I like the Ron's tools. I need to have him show me how to make that work better, and maybe I'll love that. That area where the leather isn't perfect, actually burnished fairly well. I think I'm going to be able to save this. Sorry, don't mean to have my back turned to you. I've used some glycerin. I don't feel like I need that. Maybe it makes it a little bit easier, but the water seems to do what I need it to do, the water in the denim. Bruce Cheney, I think he just uses tallow on his rag and just slicks down that fuzz with that. If you can see the shine there or not. Can't get the right angle there. But it's a nice slick finish. And then once I get a coat of Resin on here, that further seals that edge. You can see it's not quite as nice right there where that leather's a little bit soft. I think it'll firm up with the Resin in there. I don't know. Somebody had some experience on that. Will that be a problem down the road? It might be. Like I said, I know the gentleman it's going to. And if it gives him problems, I can make another one for him. I put this first hole in here about now, sometimes before this, because when I put the Resin on here, I want to hang this and let that dry. And that gives me the ability to do that. And I need to cut my keeper. So this is the buckle in. And obviously it's going to have 2 layers of leather through there. So it's going to be like that. And so this is my keeper. So I'll cut this to length now. I'll get over there in a minute and see where comments are at. And I give myself about a 1/16 of an inch overlap here. My experience is when I do that sewing, it shrinks the length of that a little bit. I guess you're still there. I haven't looked at comments for a minute. You guys might have snuck out when I had my back turned. Let me get this Resin on here, and then I will check and see if there's some comments I need to catch up on. And then we'll make that keeper. And then, believe it or not, that Resin will be just about dry enough. I can continue on. It dries pretty quick here. I'm careful with it. I don't abuse it at that point because it's still a little bit tender. I keep working this in. You don't want to leave any of that foam on there because that'll leave it'll still be there when it dries. It won't be good. And I'm just working it down into all of these stitch areas here. I use Resin, and I'll talk about that. A lot of people use tan coat, don't like Resin. They don't like, they call it a plastic looking, and I get that. I understand what you're saying. I am concerned when I'm making a belt, probably overly concerned about getting color transfer if the person sweats or gets caught in a rain shower. And some of it's probably unfounded, but some of it's my experience. When I first started, I was using tan coat, and I wasn't using Pro Dye. I was just using the leather dye from, I'm going to say it wrong, Fivings? I think it's Fivings. I don't think it's Phoebings. No, it's Phoebings. Ah, shoot. Anyway, you know who I'm talking about. And I was using the regular dye, and I was using tan coat, and they were for family members, and I had a couple of them like, I get a little color rub off on my jeans. When will that stop? I said, well, pretty soon it should. I figured just, well, it didn't really, I don't think ever really stopped very well or completely. And for most people, it's not that big a deal, but I could just envision someone with a white dress shirt getting that on there and being unhappy about it. Or, I know not everybody wears white jeans, but maybe tan jeans and getting color on there. Okay. I look it over, make sure there's not any spots like that. Let me go hang this up. I'll be right back. Now, if I wasn't working on just this belt, like that black one I did, when the dye is dry, I would go ahead and put a coat of Resin on that and let that sit while I was doing the next phase. So I'm more efficient if I have 2 or 3 belts I'm working with at a time. I guess is what I'm saying. So I wonder if one of these threads, is that gonna be long enough left over from one of those? Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, doubled it over. Yeah, actually, what I had left over is long enough, I think. Hopefully I'm not mad at myself later because I needed 2 more inches of thread. Let's look over here. I'm just looking here at the comments. Pro Resist, online Ron tool. I like, and Toby's just a down-to-earth guy. I mean, there's not anybody out there nicer than Toby from Ron's Tools. And Ron sold out to Toby, I don't know how many years ago. I'm just over here reading you guys' comments. All right, Phoebes. I have to go back. I made a video where I talked to Ian, who's the marketing director for the company, and that was my first question. I'm like, all right, I have one easy question at the beginning. How do you pronounce the company name? And actually, before that, there was a time or two I went to make a video and I was going to mention the company in it, and I would call the 800 number to listen to them say the name of the company and then go thank you and hang up so I could pronounce it right. Anyway, I never said I was the sharpest tool in the shed, but I am in the shed. So I'm just going to go ahead and create this keeper. And I just do a leapfrog on this. I could probably hold it in the stitching pony, but this is just as easier, and it goes pretty quick here. Hopefully I'm lined up in here. I've got 38 minutes to be done in 4 hours. I know some of you guys have been here the whole time. I appreciate it. That's a big ask. Maybe some of you put it on autopilot, but appreciate you bringing me into your shop. I think most of the people that are here this length of time are either doing Leathercraft or interested in Leathercraft. And maybe let me know is this something you want me to do? It was just kind of an experiment. Like I said, I was challenged on me saying how long it took me to make a belt. So I thought, you know what, I had 2 belts, both Westerns, 2 different colors that I needed to make. Been sitting on them for a while. If you haven't guessed by my rambling around here, they're both family members, both of these belts are. The black one's for my youngest son. You think he would be on here, wouldn't you? You know, while you're playing your video games there on Saturday afternoon. I come back the other direction here. And then hopefully I have enough thread when I get to the other end to then tie it into a loop. And I know a lot of people use staples and such. This seems to work well for me. Yeah, it's not my favorite thing to do is to make the keepers. In the beginning, I don't know how many times I'd get down to the end and I'm like, oh, I didn't dye leather for the keeper, and then I'd have to get all the supplies out to dye and seal the keeper. So I tend to make extra and I keep it in that little box down there. And if I forget the keeper during the dyeing process, usually there's one in there that's the same color. I've got mahogany, dark mahogany, black, saddle tan. I don't know if I said dark brown. Those are basically, black. Those are my colors that I make the majority of the stuff in. And when I get down here, I just do a square knot. I make an X shape and then a square knot on here. There's probably somebody walk back in the room and go, he's still in there talking. I was going to use the computer, but he's still talking. All right. There's my keeper. I think it looks pretty good. Cross over here. Like that. Come straight back to this other hole here. So it's a crossing pattern, then a horizontal pattern, then another cross to this other side. Pull that up tight. Then another one parallel with the line. So now you have an X on the back, or an X on the front and a square on the back. So it's really pretty tight. And then I just go back over it again. I cross over to here. And here's where I want to end up, is over here. So I actually cross over and then up on this other side and back over. That should be clear as mud. Square knot. Easier to do on the workbench. Trying to keep you, I'm probably not even in there. And then I will use my thread zapper and I'll just melt that, nick it off about 1/8 of an inch and melt it down. And do the same thing over here. There we go. I broke 2 John James needles last year. That's it. There's my keeper. Dry to touch, still a little tacky. I'll be careful with it. Grab my spots that this calls for. Tandy used to sell them, they don't anymore. I had to track down to find the same ones, and they're Ivan. I think other people have seen that supplier, and I think that's I'm probably buying it from who was making them for Tandy before. But that's them there. They're an antique nickel finish. I like this little organizer for keeping them in. And I'll show you another 8 I made. Well, it rhymes, doesn't it? So I just made a hole with each one of these on here because I would be like, what size do I need? And then I can try that here and see which size fits. And then I now know which one to use on there. So that comes in really handy. Number 3. Now, you could probably try to lay a ruler here and find the center, but what I do is I just eyeball here and I put like a light imprint there. The head of that's big enough, it'll allow quite a bit of adjustment. If I like where it's at, then I'll just then line up on top of that imprint and make that hole. If I don't like where it's at, then I will just move over until I find one that I like. Have you ever done this and then you go to put the spot in, you realize that the shaft of the rivet is a little bit short? if you've got that situation, I've taken the back side of the ball peen hammer and just compressed that leather a little bit there, and that shortens that thickness up. And these things here, when I used to work on the kitchen table, that was HR department's biggest frustration, I think, was those things rolling around on the floor. I'm sure you guys can appreciate that. I've got a little vacuum I run around in here, and it doesn't even pick it up very well. Am I in the screen? Yeah, I am. Tell you what, we're about done. I don't know if Dean made it back here or not. I haven't looked at comments for a minute. I picked that up at, I think, Michael's. I was excited when I found them on sale, and because I had bought one, and I bought like 3 more, and daggone it, they're slightly different. I was excited because I can move these around if I want to change how I've got things sorted. But the others, the first set, don't fit in there. They're too big. So you have to dump stuff from one to the other to change collections. All right, let me look at the comments real quick. Yeah, a French skiver, I've done that too. If you catch it up front, I've used that to shorten up the thickness there before I glue them together. That's one of the, I guess, disadvantages of using a 2-layer belt, because you run out of some of those options. So the next thing I do is I'll do this on top of my Pondo board to set these. And, you know, if somebody put their tools away, it'd be easier to work in this environment. I can't work in this hostile environment. Okay, when I go to set these, what I do, they're probably in there tight enough to where you can set them right on top of the Pondo board, because you don't want to set that on top of a small anvil, because you'll mash that pattern that's in there, or at least that's my experience. But especially if they're a little bit long and you go to set them, what I do is I take them on top of cardboard and I push them through that top layer of cardboard, and that helps that stay upright. I had some in the beginning that would mush one way or the other, which is frustrating to get to this point and have that. And now it's set. So I'll just go down through here, and I just line this one up now on that top of that dimple area there so it stays upright. I'm nearing done. So if you've got any questions, go ahead and type them in the comments here. And when I finish the belt, I'll wrap up and look at those comments before I log off here, and I'll try to answer those. When I did that live stream the other day, I said I'd try to get people's answers. I couldn't find a way to type an answer back to the comments. So I guess I need to become better educated on that. Okay. think they look good. While I'm here, let me find my wing divider. Where'd I leave it? There it is. I've got my mark here at 3.5 inches, and I create 2 parallel lines where I'm going to do my bag punch. And the bag punch is 1.5 inches that I use, right? Yeah, 1.5 inches. So I don't go the full 3/4. I go about 5/8 of an inch this side of there and drag to there. And then I come back and I do the same thing from this side. That gives me 2 parallel lines to help line this up. Now I line up visually centered this way. And then I rock this over and make sure I'm centered on those there. There we go. So I've got my first hole here. And yeah, I just eyeball these. This is where this one's going to go, here. And then I line this up here like that. I don't use a tool, I just eyeball it, but I was trying to show you how that lines up. And then I mark the center of that hole there and the center of that hole there. And I make sure I'm centered like I did the other way. Looky there, we're getting there. Chicago screws, someone was asking me about those. I was buying most all of my hardware from the buckle guy on that. I buy these 1/4 inch ones that I use with the stainless steel buckle. I buy those from Landwirl and Leather, and the whole reason why I buy them from him is it's got this star bit here instead of just a screwdriver. The ones from Buckle Guy have a screwdriver cut on them, and occasionally you'll slip, and then that will make a mark on the leather. So I find these don't do that. Just some clear, quick dry fingernail polish, a dab in here. And I was using wood glue, and I think it does pretty well as well, but I wouldn't get it sealed, and it's harder to get in here. I was using a toothpick to get it applied. This has a nice little applicator here, and my wife picked this up for me. I think she got it at the dollar store. And then this is that stainless steel 1.25 inch buckle from Landwirl and Leather. It's a little different style than the 1.5 inch, but I think it's a nice looking buckle. And it's not terribly expensive. It comes from China, I'm sure. I think most of the hardware does. Most of the stuff at the Buckle Guy, they say a certain percent's made in the U.S., but I don't think it's any of the stuff I buy, because almost all of it has a package that says made in China. I would like to see more U.S. manufacturing some of this stuff so that we could, support the U.S. stuff. I mean, even if they cost twice as much, I'm not worried about that. It was the convenience of this tool, because, I mean, I don't know what they cost me. 20 cents a piece, 30 cents, I don't even know. 40 cents a piece? If they're 80 cents a piece, I'd probably grumble a little bit, but it's not really going to change anything. And then I'll go ahead and put my maker's mark on here. Steel Stamps Ink. Tim Purdy made these for me, and he just does a fabulous job. And I forgot about it. Usually on an 1.25 inch belt, I put this on before I do the stitching. And he made these two for me. He helped design it. We kind of etched it out, and then he created it, handcrafted, and then my maker's mark there. All right, last thing. This belt, I've been saying 38 or 37. It's actually a little bit of an unusual request, 36 and a half and 37 and a half. So this is going to be a 6-hole belt. So 36 and a half. Spread that out a little bit. 37 and a half. And then I'll have two larger, so 38 and a half, 39 and a half, and two smaller, 35 and a half and 34 and a half. And I've made them on 1/4-inch marks. I mean, I'll make it however you want. If you're paying the bill, I can put the holes wherever and make the belt the right length. I don't get hung up on that. Sorry. I'll do a little imprint. This is what I was talking about earlier, oval or not. I'd like the oval, but I do this the same way. I just do that little bit of a imprint on there, and if I like how it's lined up, I'm holding it in place on the back side. Make that hole. Again, if you got a comment, put it in there. I'm going to answer these questions here pretty quickly, and then we'll get out of here. And I'll be done here 4 hours. Well, that's a 4-hour video, and we had some little meet and greet at the beginning there. Oh, one more, Robert. This one's 6. Yeah, I made some belts for people that, and for myself. I use 6-hole usually on mine, because there's times when I'm tucking in thicker shirts and not, or maybe it's I ate a bigger meal and not. There we go. Let's run it through here. What do you think? Would you wear that? I think it's a nice looking belt. I'll let it dry, and then I was talking about earlier, is I will roll it up. This is how I ship them. I ship them rolled up. But I'll roll them up, and then I'll just roll them like this a little bit here. And it just kind of breaks up some of those fibers a little bit there, makes it a little bit more supple. It gives some of that first wear that if you didn't do that it would take longer. And that spot on the edge here is right here. I think we're pretty good. I'll let this dry, and I'll scuff sand, and I'll put another coat on. All right, it says I've got 21 people on there, and I only have 17 thumbs up. So if you didn't hit thumbs up yet, would you please do that for me? I think it turned out really nice. I think it's a beautiful belt. Let's look at these comments. Whack, that's crazy. Wait, what? No kickback. I'm with Dean. Uh-oh, what's going on here? See, Robert? He was right. They will watch. I appreciate that. I think it's a big ask. I wouldn't want to do this to you guys very often. I appreciate the support. I know it takes time out of everybody's day to watch any of my videos, and I'm honored that you do that. I appreciate that. Let me know, though, maybe some shorter topic videos, lives, let me know what you think. Early on, I had a couple people like, please, no more lives. And yeah, at the beginning, they weren't great. And even today, the camera's supposed to be the other way so that it looks better on a TV screen. And I thought I had it set that way, and I didn't. So I'll figure out how to do that. And let me see here. We have been online for 3 hours and 44 minutes, and there's been some gossip in there. So I think I hit my time frame on that. Like I said, I typically don't do that. I have when I've been under the gun because someone needed a belt for something specific in a time frame, and I was down to brass tacks time there. But I've done that when I've had like two, and I'm like juggling both of them and get them done in like 8 hours. But I'd rather not do it that way because I don't want to turn it into a job. I admire the people out there, the leather workers, that this is their job. I admire you for your dedication to do that, because to do that, to put food on the table day in, day out, I mean, if I have enough of it, I have gone out in the shop before, and I was glad today wasn't one of it, and I start, and then it's not going smooth, and I'm like, I can't do this. And I'll wander off and do something else for the day. If this was my business, that would be hard to do it. But anyway, so on a Gordon and Pauline, I sew on a class 3, 207 thread. Yeah, I do like the 26. That was probably a little bit of a bait, saying, do I have the right sewing machine? I do believe the 26, if I got to have one sewing machine, I think it hits my spectrum the most. The stuff that I've got that's going to be heavier than that, I just hand sew. I don't have a problem hand sewing. I'll hand sew it. And I've had a few things lighter, but that'll go pretty light. I like the machine. I think it does a good job. I'm trying to think of anything that I would say that needed to be done different. One was the light on it, and I fixed that. I bought another light from them to improve the lighting on one side. I didn't think I'd like standing up and doing the sewing, but it didn't take very long. You've got a place to put your heel on the plate there, and I think it does a good job. And the speed adjustment, I really have it turned all the way up. I'm not sewing at that. I just adjust it with my foot. So anyway, I think it's great. We talked about some of the issues with that skiver. I still say, happy I bought the skiver. Anyway, I think we'll wrap up there. I'll tell you what. See you at RWB. I think that means they went to get something to eat. I do appreciate you taking time to be within the shop today. Please like, share, and subscribe. But more importantly, I do hope you have a great day, and I appreciate you taking 4 hours out of your Saturday. I should have done this when it was all snowstorms. I think in a lot of parts of the country it's getting better. I appreciate it. Have a great day. Are you still there? You know what? I meant to do that in black thread. There you go. I don't know. I'll think about it. I may just leave it that way. The guy it's for, I've not seen him on there, so he may not even know. But anyway, I do appreciate it there. Have a great day. Now I've just got a black one to sew.